Imagine a world without glowing screens or digital displays, where time wasn't something you checked, but something you felt, a rhythm woven into the very fabric of existence, guided by the stars above and the ingenious creations of human hands. This was the reality for our medieval ancestors, who measured moments not with microchips and algorithms, but with breathtaking mechanical wonders that captured the cosmos itself. These forgotten marvels of engineering didn't just tell time, they sang with it, danced with it, and in many cases, tracked it with an accuracy that would leave even our most sophisticated modern clocks in awe. Today, we're embarking on a journey through history to rediscover 30 of these extraordinary devices, each one a testament to a time when innovation wasn't just about precision, but about poetry in motion. From the astrolabe that mapped the heavens to the water clocks that turned flowing liquid into measured moments, these inventions represent something far greater than mere timekeeping. They embody humanity's timeless quest to understand our place in the universe. We'll explore how monks used candle clocks to mark their prayers through the night, how sailors trusted hourglasses to navigate treacherous seas, and how entire towns synchronized their lives to the chimes of towering mechanical clocks that were nothing short of mechanical miracles. These devices didn't just measure hours, they shaped civilizations, guided explorations, and even deepened spiritual practices, proving that timekeeping has always been about more than just numbers, it's about meaning. What makes these creations even more fascinating is that they've been largely forgotten, pushed aside by the relentless march of technological progress. Yet their stories remain deeply relevant, speaking to our eternal fascination with capturing time and making it tangible. As we uncover these 30 obsolete wonders, we'll discover not just how they worked, but why they mattered, how they reflected the values, dreams, and ingenuity of the people who created them. So join me as we step back into an era where time was measured in shadows, sands, and stars, and prepare to see our relationship with time in a completely new light. The journey begins now, and I promise you'll never look at your watch the same way again. To truly grasp the genius of these medieval timekeeping marvels, we must first step into the world that created them, a world without instant communication, global standards, or the constant hum of digital devices. In the Middle Ages, time was not a universal constant to be synchronized across continents. It was a local experience, deeply personal and profoundly connected to the rhythms of nature and community. The day began not with an alarm clock, but with the crow of a rooster or the first sliver of light on the horizon. The year unfolded not as a series of calendar appointments, but as a cycle of planting, growth, harvest, and rest, all dictated by the seasons and the weather. This was a society where the sun and stars were not just celestial decorations but essential guides for daily life, and this intimate relationship with the natural world shaped every aspect of how people measured and valued their time. For medieval Europeans, time was also deeply intertwined with faith. The Catholic Church's liturgical calendar, with its feast days, fasts, and canonical hours of prayer, matins, lauds, prime, terce, sext, none, vespers, and compline, provided a rigid structure that governed the day for both clergy and laypeople alike. Monasteries became the beating heart of timekeeping innovation, as monks needed to wake for prayers throughout the night, requiring devices that could function independently of sunlight. This spiritual need for punctuality and order was a powerful engine driving mechanical invention, pushing artisans to create ever more reliable ways to mark the passage of hours. It was this sacred duty, this desire to honor divine schedules, that spurred some of the most significant advancements in timekeeping technology, transforming it from a simple practical art into a sophisticated science. Yet timekeeping was not solely the domain of the church. In the bustling market towns emerging across Europe, time was money long before the phrase was coined. Trade fairs, market hours, and artisan guilds all operated on agreed-upon schedules, and the ability to measure time accurately could mean the difference between profit and loss. The rise of mechanical clocks in town squares during the 14th century was a revolution in social organization, allowing entire communities to coordinate their activities with a precision previously unimaginable. These towering timepieces, with their giant gears and ringing bells, became symbols of civic pride and communal identity, their faces looking down on the marketplace, ensuring that everyone, from the merchant to the customer, was playing by the same temporal rules. This democratization of time helped weave the fabric of modern society, creating a shared rhythm that bound people together in common purpose. What's perhaps most remarkable is how these societies blended ancient wisdom with budding innovation. They inherited knowledge from the classical world, from Islamic scholars, and from Eastern traditions, merging this with their own observations and mechanical cunning. A device wasn't considered successful merely because it worked. It had to resonate with the medieval worldview, one that saw the universe as an ordered, harmonious creation. A clock that showed the phases of the moon or the movement of planets wasn't just showing off, it was reflecting a cosmic truth, making the grandeur of the heavens understandable on a human scale. This context is everything. It explains why these obsolete devices were so much more than tools. They were philosophical statements, artistic achievements, and spiritual aids, all crafted to help humanity find its place within the beautiful, ordered dance of time. But why did this quest for accuracy matter so deeply in a world that moved at what seems to us a slower, more deliberate pace? The answer lies in the high stakes of daily medieval life, where a mistake in measuring time could mean disaster, disgrace, or even death. For the monk in his cloister, the rigid schedule of prayer known as the divine office was not merely a routine. It was a sacred obligation, a way of sanctifying every moment of the day and night. The canonical hours, 8 distinct periods of prayer, demanded punctuality. A bell rung too early or too late for matins, the nighttime prayer, didn't just disrupt sleep. It was seen as a spiritual failing, a misalignment with the divine rhythm of the universe. Monasteries became early adopters of mechanical innovation out of this profound necessity, developing intricate water clocks and alarm mechanisms to ensure that their devotions remained perfectly synchronized with the heavens they sought to honor. This spiritual precision was the bedrock of their disciplined lives. Out on the open sea, the consequences of imprecise timekeeping were even more dire. For a merchant vessel navigating by the stars, knowing the exact time was not a convenience. It was the key to calculating longitude and determining a ship's position. An error of just a few minutes could throw their calculations off by dozens of miles, potentially sending a ship crashing into unseen coastlines or leaving it lost and adrift for weeks, its crew succumbing to starvation or scurvy. The development of accurate maritime timekeepers, like improved nocturnals and early sandglasses for measuring half-hour watch shifts, was a matter of economic survival and literal life or death. The safe delivery of spices, silk, and other precious cargo, and the very lives of the sailors, depended on the increasingly precise measurement of those long, treacherous hours at sea. Back on land, in the bustling market towns that were the engines of the medieval economy, time was quite literally money. Trade fairs operated on strict schedules, and guilds regulated the working hours of artisans to ensure fairness and quality control. A merchant who opened his stall late because his water clock was slow might miss the morning rush of buyers. A blacksmith who overcharged for a job claiming it took longer than it did could be fined by his guild for violating their strict time price agreements. The public clock in the town square, often installed on a church or guild hall, became the ultimate arbiter of civic life. Its bells marked the start and end of the workday, the opening of the markets, and the imposition of the evening curfew. This shared public time fostered a new sense of communal trust and coordination, allowing commerce and society to function with a previously impossible level of efficiency and fairness. This relentless drive for precision did more than just solve immediate practical problems. It became a powerful catalyst for scientific and engineering breakthroughs. The challenge of building a weight-driven clock that could keep accurate time over days and weeks forced clockmakers to delve into physics, metallurgy, and advanced mathematics. They had to understand gear ratios, the properties of different metals, and the principles of harmonic motion to create the first reliable escapements. Each incremental improvement in accuracy, shaving minutes, then seconds off the daily error, represented a monumental leap in human ingenuity. This pursuit laid the entire groundwork for the scientific revolution that would follow, proving that the desire to master time is a fundamentally human endeavor, one that connects the medieval craftsman painstakingly assembling a foliate balance to the modern engineer designing a quantum clock. Their obsession with accuracy echoes through the centuries, a testament to our timeless need to measure, understand, and ultimately command the very flow of time itself. Picture holding in your hands a device so advanced for its time that it could calculate your position on Earth, tell you the precise hour of the day or night, predict the movement of the stars, and even offer astrological insights, all without a single microchip or battery. This was the reality of the Astrolabe, a breathtakingly sophisticated instrument that truly deserves its nickname as the medieval smartphone. But unlike our pocket computers today, the Astrolabe didn't rely on satellites or cellular networks. It tapped directly into the cosmos, using the sun and stars as its unwavering guide. For astronomers, navigators, and scholars across the medieval world, this wasn't just a tool, it was a portable universe, a masterpiece of metal and mathematics that brought the heavens down to Earth. At its heart, the Astrolabe was a complex model of the sky, typically crafted from solid brass or sometimes even finely carved wood. It consisted of multiple stacked plates, each engraved with a web of lines representing celestial coordinates, and a rotating fretwork disc called a reter that mapped out the positions of the brightest stars. The user would hold the Astrolabe by its ring, allowing it to hang vertically, and then sight a specific star or the sun through an alidade, a movable sighting bar on the back. By aligning the instrument with a celestial body, the user could then rotate the reter on the front to match that observation. Instantly, the intricate scales and markings would reveal the current time, the sun's altitude, the latitude of their location, or even the sign of the zodiac the sun was in. It was a dazzling display of analog computation, a device that could perform complex astronomical calculations through nothing more than precise craftsmanship and a deep understanding of the sky's mechanics. Its applications were as varied as they were vital. For an Islamic scholar determining the exact times for daily prayers, the Astrolabe provided the accuracy needed to maintain religious devotion. For a sailor navigating the vast and treacherous Mediterranean, it could help calculate latitude and, by extension, their north-south position, offering a crucial lifeline when land was nowhere in sight. For an astrologer casting a horoscope, the device could map the planetary positions at the moment of a person's birth, and for a farmer planning the harvest or a traveler setting out on a journey, it could signal the changing seasons and the length of daylight. This incredible versatility made the astrolabe a symbol of knowledge and status, an object that blended practical utility with profound intellectual and even spiritual significance. What makes the astrolabe story even more compelling is its journey across cultures and continents. While its origins lie in ancient Greece, it was medieval Islamic scholars and craftsmen who refined it to its peak of perfection. In great centers of learning like Baghdad and Cordoba, artisans transformed the astrolabe into a thing of both scientific precision and exquisite beauty, engraving them with intricate designs and Arabic calligraphy. This knowledge then slowly filtered into Europe through trade and cultural exchange in places like Muslim Spain, where Christian and Jewish scholars eagerly adopted and adapted the technology. The astrolabe stands as a powerful reminder that the pursuit of knowledge has always been a global endeavor, a shared human project that transcends borders and beliefs. It represents a golden age where art and science were not separate disciplines but intertwined expressions of human curiosity and genius, a perfect marriage of the celestial and the terrestrial that allowed anyone, anywhere, to hold a piece of the universe in their hands. But if the astrolabe was the sophisticated computer of its day, the water clock was the sturdy, reliable workhorse, a device that turned something as simple and abundant as flowing water into a steady, measurable heartbeat of time. Known to the ancients as a klepsydra, which literally means water thief, these ingenious instruments solved one of the most frustrating limitations of the sundial. They worked perfectly in the dead of night, during overcast days, and even indoors, making them the first truly all-weather, all-hours timekeepers. Their principle was deceptively simple, a testament to the elegance of early engineering. At its most basic, a water clock was a container, a bowl or a pot, that either filled with or drained of water at a constant, predictable rate. Markings on the inside of the vessel would correspond to the passage of hours, allowing anyone to literally see time flowing before their eyes. This was time you could hear in the steady drip and feel in the rising or falling level, a tangible and continuous measure of moments that connected the user directly to the physical world. The sheer versatility of the water clock is what made it a cornerstone of timekeeping for centuries. In its simplest form, it was an affordable and accessible tool for a household or a small shop. But in the hands of skilled craftsmen, the klepsydra evolved into breathtakingly complex automata, marvels of hydraulic engineering that did far more than just tell time. In the courts of Chinese emperors and the workshops of Islamic scholars, elaborate water clocks were built that incorporated ringing bells, moving figurines that acted out scenes from mythology, and even intricate astronomical displays that tracked the paths of planets. These were not merely timekeeping devices, they were spectacular public spectacles designed to showcase the power, wealth, and intellectual sophistication of a ruler or a city. They transformed the abstract concept of time into a theatrical performance, engaging the senses with sound and motion in a way that a simple sundial shadow never could. Perhaps the most critical role for the water clock, however, was within the silent stone walls of medieval monasteries. For monks observing the divine office, the canonical hours of prayer continued through the night. Waking for prayers like matins and lauds required a reliable alarm that functioned in total darkness, and the water clock provided the perfect solution. Monastic klepsydri were often designed with clever float mechanisms. As the water level reached a certain point, it would trigger a lever that dropped a weight or struck a bell, creating a loud, automated alarm to rouse the sleeping brothers for their devotions. This innovation was absolutely vital for maintaining the rigid spiritual discipline of monastic life. It ensured that the sacred rhythm of prayer continued unbroken, 24 hours a day, proving that this ancient technology was the essential precursor to the mechanical alarm clocks we take for granted today. The legacy of the water clock flows directly into the heart of the mechanical age. The very principles medieval engineers mastered to regulate the steady flow of water using precisely calibrated holes, float valves, and gear systems became the foundational ideas for the weight-driven clocks that would eventually replace them. The problem of creating a constant, measurable force is the same whether you're harnessing the flow of a liquid or the fall of a weight. The clepsydra was the crucial bridge, the proving ground where inventors first learned to tame natural forces into a predictable mechanical beat. It demonstrated that humanity could not just observe time, but could actually capture its passage and put it to work, setting the stage for the horological revolution that would soon transform the entire world. This humble device, born from a pot of water, truly set time in motion. Now, imagine a world plunged into darkness once the sun sets, with only the flickering glow of a flame to push back the night. In this world, a simple candle became so much more than a source of light. It became a clock, a faithful companion that measured out the long, silent hours with a quiet, burning consistency. The candle clock is a beautiful example of medieval ingenuity at its most practical and elegant, transforming an everyday object into a sophisticated timekeeping instrument. By carefully calibrating the burn rate of wax and tallow, our ancestors found a way to make time itself visible, watching the hour markers slowly disappear as the flame consumed the candle, turning illumination into information. The design was brilliantly straightforward. A candle of a known, consistent composition would be manufactured to burn at a very specific rate, say, 1 inch every hour. This candle would then be marked along its length with carefully spaced lines, each representing the passage of another unit of time. You could simply glance at the candle to see how much of the night had passed by how much of it had vanished into the air. But the true innovation came with the audible alarm. Some candle clocks were designed with metal nails or weights embedded directly into the wax at specific intervals. As the flame burned down and reached one of these weights, it would be released to fall with a loud clang into a metal tray below. In the profound silence of a monastery dormitory or a remote household, that sudden noise was an effective and reliable alarm, ensuring that even those deep in sleep wouldn't miss their appointed hour for prayer or duty. This made candle clocks indispensable in medieval monasteries, where the strict observance of the divine office required waking for prayers at specific times throughout the night. While a water clock might freeze in a cold scriptorium and a sundial was useless after dark, the candle clock provided both light to read by and a dependable alarm to maintain the sacred schedule. Its gentle, warm glow was far more than functional. It created an atmosphere of contemplation, its flickering flame a silent metaphor for the passing of life itself. This humble device perfectly illustrates the medieval mindset, a world where the spiritual and the practical were seamlessly intertwined, and where even the most mundane objects could be imbued with deeper meaning and purpose. Beyond the cloister walls, candle clocks found a place in the homes of common people. They were an affordable and accessible technology for those who couldn't hope to own a complex mechanical clock. A merchant might use one to ensure he started his day early enough to reach the market, or a household might light one to time the cooking of a meal. Their reliability during the long, sunless winter months made them a crucial tool for navigating the seasonal darkness that descended across Europe. The candle clock's legacy is a powerful reminder that the greatest innovations are often born from necessity, using the materials close at hand to solve the problems right in front of us. It was a technology of light, of time, and of profound simplicity, burning steadily through the centuries as a testament to human resourcefulness. While the candle clock measured time through the consuming glow of fire, another device harnessed the silent, steady flow of a much simpler substance, sand. The hourglass, with its elegant symmetry of two glass bulbs connected by a narrow, precise neck, is perhaps the most instantly recognizable symbol of time's passage from the medieval world. Its genius lies in its breathtaking simplicity and profound reliability. Unlike a water clock that might be affected by freezing temperatures or evaporation, or a candle clock susceptible to drafts, the hourglass was remarkably immune to its environment. The flow of dry, fine sand from the upper bulb to the lower one was consistent, predictable, and unaffected by the rolling of a ship on stormy seas or the chill of an unheated church. This made it the perfect instrument for measuring fixed, short intervals with unerring accuracy, a portable pulse of time that could be set in motion anywhere. This rugged dependability made the hourglass an indispensable tool aboard ships during the great age of exploration. Sailors used them to measure the length of their watches, the critical 4-hour shifts where a sailor's alertness could mean the difference between safe passage and disaster. The ship's boy had the vital duty of turning the half-hour glass precisely as the last grain fell, and ringing the ship's bell to mark each passing interval, a system that gave us the naval tradition of measuring time in bells that persists to this day. This method allowed for the seamless coordination of a crew working in shifts, ensuring the ship was manned 24 hours a day. On the open ocean, far from any land-based clock tower, the hourglass was a lifeline, a small, steady heartbeat that maintained order and discipline amidst the unpredictable vastness of the sea. But its utility stretched far beyond the decks of ships. In the hushed reverence of medieval churches, an hourglass often sat on the pulpit, its slow trickle of sand ensuring the priest's sermon did not overrun its allotted time, much to the relief of the congregation, no doubt. In universities and scholarly debates, it served as a neutral arbiter, timing each speaker's arguments to ensure a fair and orderly exchange of ideas. In the kitchen of a wealthy household, a smaller version might time the boiling of an egg, while in the courtroom, a larger one could ensure that lawyers presented their cases with brevity. This incredible versatility across such different facets of life, sacred, intellectual, and domestic, shows how the hourglass became a universal tool, a democratizer of time that was both affordable and accessible to many levels of society. Of course, the hourglass's power extends far beyond its practical uses. It has endured for centuries as one of our most potent metaphors. The visible, irreversible trickle of sand from one chamber to another is a stark, visual representation of mortality itself, a reminder that our time is finite and constantly moving. It appears in art, literature, and allegory as the attribute of Father Time, a symbol of the inevitable end that awaits all things, yet there is also hope in its design. The very fact that it can be turned over and started again speaks to renewal, to second chances, to the cyclical nature of life. This dual symbolism captures the medieval mindset perfectly, a worldview that was intensely practical and deeply philosophical at once. The hourglass was not just a tool for measuring minutes, it was an object for contemplating eternity, a humble device that connected the mundane task of timing a sermon to the grand, cosmic truth of time's relentless and beautiful flow. While sundials ruled the day and candle clocks lit the interior night, a different challenge awaited those under the open sky after sunset: how to read the time when the sun was gone, and the only lights were the distant, twinkling stars. This is where the Nocturnal truly earned its name, a clever handheld computer crafted from wood or brass that transformed the entire night sky into a giant, predictable clock face. Its design was a marvel of intuitive astronomy, typically consisting of 2 or 3 rotating discs, a larger base plate marked with the months of the year, a smaller one for the days of the month, and a pointer arm that the user would align with the celestial clockwork overhead. The entire system revolved, quite literally, around the one star that appears stationary in the northern hemisphere, Polaris, the North Star. This fixed point in the spinning vault of night became the central pivot around which the Nocturnal's calculations turned, allowing a skilled user to tell the time by observing how the other stars appeared to wheel around it. Operating this instrument was a ritual that connected the user directly to the cosmos. On a clear night, the observer would first set the dial to the current date, locking the plate to account for the slow, seasonal shift of the stars. Then, holding the device upright, they would sight the North Star through the hole in the instrument's center. With that fixed reference point established, they would then rotate the pointer arm until it lined up with two specific stars in the constellation Ursa Major, often called the pointers for their role in guiding the way to Polaris. Once perfectly aligned, the pointer would indicate the hour on the calibrated outer scale. This process, which sounds complex to us now, became second nature to sailors and travelers who relied on it, a nightly dance between human ingenuity and celestial mechanics that yielded a surprisingly accurate readout, often within a quarter of an hour. Its value, particularly for maritime navigation before the widespread use of the magnetic compass, cannot be overstated. For a ship's captain on the vast, featureless ocean, the Nocturnal was a lifeline. It provided a reliable method to calculate the time of night, which was essential for determining the length of watches, and for dead reckoning, estimating a ship's position based on its speed and direction traveled. While it couldn't provide latitude or longitude with the precision of later instruments, it offered a vital piece of the navigational puzzle when every clue mattered. Its rugged, simple construction meant it was less susceptible to the corrosive effects of sea air and the violent motion of a ship than more delicate mechanical clocks, making it a trusted companion on long and perilous voyages into the unknown. What's truly captivating about the Nocturnal is how it represents a different kind of technological thinking. This wasn't about building a complex machine with gears and weights to impose a human sense of order on time. It was about building a key to decipher an order that already existed. It required the user to understand and participate in the rhythms of the universe, to look up and engage with the night sky in a deeply personal way. In an age before light pollution, when the Milky Way was a brilliant river across the heavens, the Nocturnal was the perfect tool for its environment. It required no batteries, no winding, and nothing more than a clear view of the stars that have guided humanity for millennia. It stands as a beautiful testament to the idea that sometimes the most sophisticated technology isn't the one that does the most, but the one that connects us most directly to the natural world, allowing us to listen to the quiet, steady ticking of the cosmos itself. While the Nocturnal helped medieval Europeans navigate by the stars, we must journey much further back in time and south to the banks of the Nile to discover a device that laid the very foundation for this celestial approach to timekeeping, the Merckitt. This ancient Egyptian instrument, whose name quite literally means instrument of knowledge, may seem worlds apart from the complex gear-driven clocks of the medieval era, but its influence is a powerful thread woven through the entire tapestry of horological history. The Merckitt wasn't just a tool, it was a masterpiece of elegant simplicity, a pair of aligned sighting bars made from palm ribs or bronze, often used with a plumb line to create a perfectly vertical reference against the night sky. Egyptian astronomers, known as hour watchers, would use this setup to track the transit of specific stars across the meridian, the imaginary north-south line in the sky. By observing which stars crossed this line and when, they could determine the time with remarkable accuracy throughout the night, dividing the darkness into 12 equal hours long before such a system was adopted in Europe. This precise timekeeping was not driven by commerce or travel, but by something the Egyptians held even more sacred: the divine schedule of the gods. The complex rituals performed in their temples needed to occur at exact moments to maintain cosmic order, or mat. The rising of certain stars signaled the time for specific prayers and offerings, and the Merckitt was the essential tool that ensured these ceremonies were performed with perfect celestial timing. It allowed the priests to synchronize the rhythm of human worship with the grand, predictable clockwork of the heavens, believing that this harmony was essential for the stability of the universe itself. The device was so integral to their culture that it was often depicted in hieroglyphics and buried with important astronomers, a testament to its role as a key to understanding the cosmos. So how does an invention from the age of the pharaohs connect to our medieval timekeepers? The answer lies in the great libraries and translation movements of the Islamic Golden Age and later medieval Europe. As scholars in places like Baghdad and Toledo began to feverishly translate ancient Greek, Persian, and yes, Egyptian texts, they rediscovered descriptions and principles of these early astronomical instruments. While the physical Merckitts were lost to the sands of time, the knowledge they represented was preserved in scrolls and codices. Medieval astronomers, deeply fascinated by both the ancient wisdom and the practical need to determine prayer times, studied these concepts intently. They recognized the sheer brilliance of using a simple plumb line for celestial alignment, a principle that was directly adapted and refined into the more familiar quadrants and astrolabes of their own era. The Merckitt's core idea, establishing a true vertical to measure the heavens, became a foundational pillar of medieval astronomy. This journey of the Merckitt from the banks of the Nile to the scriptoriums of medieval monks is a profound reminder that innovation is almost never a solitary event. It is a continuous conversation across centuries and cultures. The medieval world did not build its timekeeping wonders from scratch. It stood on the shoulders of ancient giants, repurposing and enhancing ideas that were thousands of years old. The Merckitt's legacy is therefore not found in a specific medieval clock, but in the very mindset it represented: the unwavering belief that by carefully observing and aligning with the heavens, humanity could not just measure time, but could participate in its eternal, orderly flow. It proves that the quest for accurate time is a truly human endeavor, one that connects an Egyptian priest timing a ritual under the desert stars to a medieval monk in a cold tower, both gazing at the same constellations, separated by millennia but united by the same timeless pursuit. If the Astrolabe was the medieval equivalent of a supercomputer, then the Quadrant was its sleek, portable cousin, a device that distilled the complex science of the heavens into a simple, handheld tool that could fit in a scholar's palm or a sailor's pouch. Shaped like a quarter circle, this unassuming instrument was a powerhouse of precision, its curved edge meticulously engraved with a web of scales and numbers that held the key to unlocking time, location, and the very movement of the stars. Unlike the multi-layered complexity of the Astrolabe, the Quadrant's brilliance lay in its elegant simplicity. By measuring the altitude of the sun at noon or the angle of a known star above the horizon, a user could perform a quick calculation and arrive at the local time with an accuracy that was nothing short of revolutionary for its era. This was timekeeping reduced to its geometric essence, a perfect marriage of mathematics and observation that put the power of measurement directly into the hands of anyone who knew how to use it. The Quadrant's versatility made it an indispensable tool across a surprising range of professions. For the medieval astronomer perched in a university tower, it was a fundamental instrument for mapping the heavens, calculating the changing declination of the sun throughout the year, and even determining the exact moment of an equinox. For the navigator on the deck of a merchant ship, It provided a vital way to calculate latitude by measuring the height of the North Star, offering a crucial data point for dead reckoning on the vast, featureless ocean. Surveyors used it to measure the height of a castle tower or the depth of a valley, while astrologers, who were often the same people as astronomers, employed it to cast more accurate horoscopes by precisely determining the positions of the planets. This one tool seamlessly bridged the theoretical and the practical, the sacred and the profane, proving that in the medieval mind, understanding the cosmos was just as important for building a cathedral or navigating a trade route as it was for contemplating the divine. What truly set the Quadrant apart and cemented its popularity was its incredible portability and ruggedness. Unlike a fragile water clock or a complex mechanical movement, a well-made quadrant was typically crafted from a single sheet of wood or brass. It was lightweight, required no delicate internal mechanisms, and could withstand the harsh conditions of a sea voyage or being jostled in a scholar's saddlebag. This durability, combined with its relatively straightforward operation compared to an astrolabe, made it the perfect field instrument. A merchant on the Silk Road could pull it out to check the time before a negotiation. A monk on a pilgrimage could use it to ensure he stopped for prayers at the correct canonical hour. It democratized precise measurement, moving timekeeping out of the monastery and the university and into the wider world, fostering a new, more personal relationship with time and space. The legacy of the Quadrant is a testament to the enduring power of a beautifully simple idea. Its fundamental principle, using angular measurement to solve problems, is still at the heart of modern navigation and astronomy. While we now use digital sextants and GPS satellites, the geometric trigonometry they rely on is the direct intellectual descendant of those scales engraved on a medieval quadrant. This humble quarter circle reminds us that the most impactful technology isn't always the most complex. Sometimes it's the tool that perfectly balances intellectual sophistication with practical, accessible design. It allowed the medieval world to literally take the measure of the heavens, fostering a confidence that humanity could not only observe the universe, but could also comprehend its laws and use that knowledge to navigate the complexities of life on Earth. Yet for all the celestial guidance of quadrants and astrolabes, these instruments still required a skilled user to interpret the heavens. Time remained something you had to actively seek out to calculate under an open sky. But in the 14th century, something extraordinary happened that would change humanity's relationship with time forever. Time came to the people. It descended from the stars and took up residence in the very heart of the medieval town, embodied in a towering, ticking mechanical marvel. This was the birth of the weight-driven mechanical clock, and it didn't just tell time, it announced time with a relentless public authority that became the new heartbeat of entire communities. Imagine the awe of a medieval peasant, accustomed to the soft, variable rhythms of nature, suddenly living in the shadow of a great church tower that now rang out the hours with a force and regularity that seemed almost divine. This was no longer just observing time. This was time engineered, time mechanized, time made master of all. The genius of these early mechanical clocks lay in their revolutionary core mechanism, the verge and foliot escapement. This intricate dance of gears and weights solved the most fundamental problem of timekeeping: how to release energy in small, measured, equal increments. A heavy weight provided the power, but it was the escapement that acted as the brain and the heartbeat, catching and releasing the gear train with a rhythmic tick-tock that transformed a simple falling weight into a precise meter of moments. This was the breakthrough. For the first time, time was not measured by the continuous flow of water, the burning of wax, or the shifting of a shadow, but by the regular, oscillating swing of a mechanical oscillator. This innovation created a new kind of time, abstract, uniform, and independent of the natural world. A cloudy day or a freezing night no longer mattered. The clock in the tower ticked on, indifferent to the world outside its stone housing. These clocks were far more than simple time tellers. They were the central servers of medieval society, synchronizing the lives of thousands. Their bells regulated the entire rhythm of urban life, marking the opening and closing of the city gates, the start and end of the workday for the guilds, the moment the market could begin, and the hour of the evening curfew. This shared public time fostered a new sense of collective identity and efficiency. A bell rung from the tower was a command that everyone heard simultaneously, creating a synchronized communal pulse that allowed the complex organism of a medieval town to function with a new level of coordination. The clock became the ultimate symbol of civic pride, a testament to a town's wealth and technical sophistication. Towns competed to build ever more elaborate and beautiful clocks, often adorning them with dazzling astronomical displays showing the phases of the moon and the movement of the planets, and automata, figures of saints that would process on the hour or a rooster that would crow. These were not just timepieces, they were theatrical spectacles blending science, art, and religion into a single, mesmerizing performance. The impact of this mechanical revolution stretched far beyond the town square. Inside monastery walls, the mechanical clock brought a new level of exactitude to the sacred observance of the divine office. While water clocks and alarm candles had served their purpose, the mechanical clock's unwavering rhythm ensured that the 7 daily prayers could be observed with a precision that was thought to honor God's own perfect order. This relentless mechanical tick-tock began to subtly reshape the very human perception of time itself. Time was no longer a natural, flowing cycle of days and seasons. It was becoming a quantifiable commodity, a series of identical, countable units that could be saved, wasted, or spent. The mechanical clock laid the foundational mindset for the scientific revolution and the eventual rise of industrial capitalism, creating a world where time could be managed, optimized, and controlled. The heartbeat of those first great clocks still echoes in every second we count today, a lasting monument to the moment we began to build time itself. Yet for all the grandeur of those town clocks, the relentless mechanical precision they championed was born not in a public square, but in the silent, disciplined darkness of the monastery. Long before factory whistles or smartphone alerts, the most demanding daily schedule on Earth belonged to medieval monks, whose sacred duty to observe the divine office required them to rise and pray at specific hours throughout the night. This spiritual obligation created an urgent and non-negotiable need for a reliable wake-up call, a need that gave birth to one of history's most fascinating and overlooked inventions, the monastic alarm clock. These weren't the simple, beeping gadgets we know today. They were intricate marvels of early automation, ingenious contraptions that used the fundamental forces of water, weights, and gravity to stir sleeping souls with a startling mechanical certainty. The most common design was a clever evolution of the water clock. Monastic clepsydry were often modified with a simple yet brilliant float mechanism. As water steadily dripped into a lower reservoir, a floating bucket or indicator would slowly rise. At a predetermined level carefully calibrated to represent a specific number of hours, the float would trigger a lever. This lever might release a heavy weight that would drop onto a bell, creating a loud clang in the otherwise silent dormitory. Other designs used the same principle to pull a string that would ring a bell directly or even swing a gentle hammer to tap on the forehead of the designated waking monk. This was automation in its purest form, a machine programmed to perform a specific task at an exact time without any human intervention, all driven by the patient, unerring flow of water. The sophistication of these devices reveals a profound understanding of both mechanics and human nature. Some of the more advanced alarm mechanisms were adjustable, allowing the monk in charge to set the alarm for different times depending on the season, as the length of night and day changed throughout the year. This wasn't just a crude timer, it was a programmable system, a direct ancestor of the settings on our modern digital alarms. The primary goal was, of course, spiritual. Waking for the night office of matins was considered a vital act of devotion, a struggle against the weakness of the flesh to honor a divine schedule. The alarm clock ensured this struggle was one, that the community's prayer continued unbroken, maintaining a sacred rhythm that was believed to mirror the eternal praise offered by angels in heaven. But the impact of this invention rippled far beyond the monastery walls. The monastic alarm clock represents a pivotal moment in human history, the moment we began to delegate the authority of timekeeping to a machine. It transferred the responsibility of remembering from human memory to mechanical certainty. This was a monumental shift in mindset. It fostered a new culture of discipline and punctuality that would eventually seep into the secular world, shaping the future of work, science, and social organization. The relentless, mechanical rhythm that now governs so much of our lives began with a bell ringing in the dark, calling a sleeping monk to prayer. It's a powerful reminder that our modern obsession with waking on time isn't a product of the Industrial Revolution, but has much deeper roots, intertwining spiritual devotion with mechanical ingenuity to create a technology that would eventually wake the entire world. Yet, even as the mechanical clock began its steady tick from the town square, another timekeeper continued its silent, elegant work in the sunlight, a device so ancient and yet so perfectly refined that it never truly lost its place in the medieval world. The sundial, in its beautiful simplicity, represents humanity's first and most direct conversation with the cosmos, a dialogue written in shadows. Long before gears and weights, people understood that the moving shadow cast by a stationary object could chart the sun's journey across the sky and, by extension, the passage of the day itself. This fundamental principle remained utterly reliable, and in the medieval period, the humble sundial was not cast aside as a relic but was instead elevated to an art form, its design refined with a mathematical sophistication that would astonish many today. This was not a primitive tool, it was a precision instrument honed by centuries of observation and innovation. The most significant challenge for any sundial is that the sun's path changes with the seasons. Its arc across the sky is high and long in the summer and low and short in the winter. A simple stick in the ground, known as a gnomon, will tell you the time, but its reading will be off by as much as an hour at different times of the year. Medieval scholars and craftsmen solved this with breathtaking ingenuity. They developed sophisticated dials that accounted for this variation, often by tilting the gnomon to align with the Earth's axis, making it parallel to the planet's rotational pole. This crucial adjustment meant the shadow would fall accurately throughout the year. Furthermore, they created portable sundials exquisitely crafted from brass or ivory that were calibrated for specific latitudes. A traveler moving from Paris to Rome might carry several different plates for his pocket dial, each engraved with the correct hour lines for a different city, effectively making it one of the first personalized, adjustable timekeeping devices. This blend of science and art made the sundial a ubiquitous presence across all levels of society. In the garden of a wealthy nobleman, an elaborate horizontal sundial might serve as a centerpiece, its face carved from marble and adorned with a poignant motto like, "I count only the sunny hours," transforming a timekeeping device into a philosophical statement. On the south-facing wall of a village church, a vertical dial would be painted for all to see, ensuring the entire community could coordinate their day. Even shepherds and farmers used simple portable versions to structure their work. Its beauty lay in its silent, democratic accessibility. It required no winding, no maintenance, and no cost beyond its creation. It was a technology that belonged to everyone, from the king in his castle to the peasant in his field, all reading the same time from the same sun. The sundial's enduring legacy is a powerful testament to a different relationship with time, one based on harmonizing with nature rather than conquering it. The mechanical clock created an abstract, uniform time that could be boxed and counted, but the sundial remained rooted in solar time, what we now call apparent time, which varies slightly throughout the year. This meant that noon on a sundial was always true noon, the moment the sun reached its highest point in the sky, even if that moment came a few minutes earlier or later than the day before. It kept people connected to the actual rhythm of their planet, a rhythm that governs the growth of crops, the migration of animals, and the very cycle of life itself. In an age increasingly dominated by the mechanical heartbeat of the clock, the sundial stood as a gentle, silent reminder that our first and most faithful timekeeper will always be the sun, faithfully casting its shadow, marking our days with a rhythm as old as the earth itself. But while monks and townsfolk measured their days in prayers and market bells, for those who made their living on the water, time moved to a completely different rhythm, the relentless, powerful, and utterly predictable pulse of the tides. For medieval coastal communities, the sea was both a source of sustenance and a realm of immense danger, and its comings and goings dictated the very possibility of life. Knowing when the water would retreat to reveal fertile fishing grounds or when it would surge to float a heavy trading vessel was not a matter of convenience, it was a matter of survival. And so, from this intimate and necessary relationship with the ocean, emerged one of the most specialized and brilliant timekeepers of the era, the tide clock, a device that didn't just tell the hour but predicted the behavior of the sea itself. These ingenious instruments were masterclasses in blending deep empirical observation with mechanical cleverness. For generations, sailors and fishermen had noticed the undeniable link between the moon's position in the sky and the ocean's tides. They learned that the cycle from one high tide to the next was approximately 12 hours and 25 minutes, mirroring the lunar day rather than the solar one. Tide clocks codified this ancient, hard-won knowledge into a tangible, mechanical form. Unlike a standard clock with a 12-hour face, a tide clock's dial was calibrated to this longer lunar cycle. Through a clever arrangement of gears with specific ratios, the clock's movement would complete its cycle in 24 hours and 50 minutes, perfectly synchronizing with the moon's journey around the Earth and thus the ocean's ebb and flow. The value of such a device is almost impossible to overstate for a medieval port town. Imagine a merchant captain waiting to load his cog with wool or wine. Arriving at the dock at high tide meant his ship sat high in the water, its deck level with the quay, allowing for easy and efficient loading. Arriving at low tide, however, could mean his ship was stranded in the mud, sitting far below the dock wall, making loading impossible and delaying his voyage for hours or even days. A tide clock, often mounted in a harbor master's office or a wealthy ship owner's home, could predict these windows of opportunity days in advance. It allowed for the meticulous planning of departures and arrivals, ensuring that vessels could enter and leave port safely without running aground on newly exposed sandbars or rocks. For the fishing community, the tide clock was equally vital. Certain types of fish and shellfish were only accessible at the lowest tides, when vast tracts of the seabed were exposed. Knowing precisely when the water would recede to its farthest point allowed fishermen to plan their expeditions with confidence, maximizing their catch and minimizing the peril of being caught by the rushing incoming tide. Furthermore, these clocks brought a new level of safety to navigation in treacherous coastal waters. Channels that were deep and safe for passage at high tide could become deadly obstacles just a few hours later. A tide clock gave sailors the knowledge they needed to time their passage through these narrow waterways perfectly, turning a gamble with nature into a calculated and safe maneuver. The tide clock stands as a profound testament to a form of timekeeping that is deeply ecological. It didn't impose an artificial, human-made schedule onto the world. Instead, it humbly listened to the natural rhythms of the planet and translated them into a usable guide. It represents a symbiotic relationship with the environment, where technology was used not to conquer nature, but to understand it and work in harmony with its powerful, immutable cycles. In an age where we are often disconnected from the natural world, the tide clock reminds us that some of the most crucial time we can keep is not measured in minutes, but in the rise and fall of the seas, a rhythm as ancient as the moon itself. While the mechanical clocks of Europe marked time with the clanging of bells and the water clocks of the Middle East with a steady drip, across the vast expanse of Asia, timekeeping unfolded in a cloud of fragrant, silent smoke. The incense clock represents a philosophy of time measurement that is almost poetic in its elegance, transforming the abstract passage of hours into a sensory experience that engaged both sight and smell. In the serene atmosphere of a Zen Buddhist temple or the opulent court of a Chinese emperor, these devices did far more than just track intervals. They curated the very atmosphere of the day, marking moments not with a jarring sound, but with a gradual, graceful change in the air itself. This was timekeeping as an art form, where precision was wrapped in beauty and functionality was infused with ritual. The mechanics of an incense clock were deceptively simple, yet required immense skill to produce accurately. The most common form was the incense stick, carefully crafted from a paste of fragrant wood powders like sandalwood or agarwood, combined with a binding agent. The true artistry lay in the calibration of the burn rate. Artisans would painstakingly test and refine their recipes to ensure a stick of a specific length and composition would burn for a precise duration, perhaps 1 hour or several. These sticks would then be placed in long, ornate trays, often made of bronze or elaborately carved wood, and the path of the stick would be marked with indicators for each hour. As the glowing ember consumed the incense, it would sequentially pass these markers, providing a clear visual cue of the time. Other, more elaborate versions used powdered incense poured into pre-cut grooves in a tray, often in intricate, maze-like patterns. The lit powder would smolder its way along the designated path, and the changing scent as it reached different compartments, perhaps shifting from sandalwood to clove to musk, would audiously signal the transition from one period of the day to the next. This multisensory approach made incense clocks perfectly suited to the contemplative environments of temples and monasteries. The gentle, aromatic smoke was itself a part of spiritual practice, used to purify a space and aid in meditation. A monk deep in prayer could note the passage of time by the evolving fragrance in the air, a subtle reminder that shifted his focus without the harsh interruption of a bell. In imperial courts, these clocks were objects of high status and refinement. An elaborate incense clock, perhaps featuring a dragon-shaped tray with its body forming the time-measuring groove, was a symbol of the emperor's power and sophistication. It demonstrated a command over not just time, but also over the luxury trade in rare spices and perfumes. The clock's silent operation allowed for courtly rituals and meetings to proceed with undisturbed grace, its fragrant smoke becoming an invisible, ever-present attendant marking the schedule of the realm. The story of the incense clock is also a powerful testament to the interconnectedness of the medieval world through trade routes like the Silk Road. While primarily an East Asian innovation, knowledge and examples of these devices traveled west, fascinating Islamic scholars and European merchants who encountered them. They presented a completely novel concept of timekeeping, one that prioritized ambience and sensory engagement over the mechanical automation beginning to dominate in the West. This cultural exchange highlights that the quest to measure time was a universal human drive, but the solutions were beautifully diverse, reflecting deep differences in philosophy, religion, and aesthetics. The incense clock doesn't just show us a different way to tell time, it shows us a different way to experience it, not as a force to be mastered by gears, but as a rhythm to be breathed in, a fragrant hour to be savored before it gently vanishes into the air. But for all the grandeur of the tide clock and the fragrant subtlety of the incense clock, the true mechanical revolution that would eventually dominate timekeeping was happening deep inside the great tower clocks of Europe, centered around a component so small yet so profoundly important that it can rightly be called the heart of the machine, the verge escapement. This deceptively simple-looking device, essentially just a vertical rod with two small pallets attached to it, solved the single greatest challenge in mechanical timekeeping: how to take the raw, unchecked power of a falling weight and tame it, releasing its energy in tiny, measured, perfectly equal increments. Before its invention in the 13th century, timekeeping devices could indicate the passage of time, but they could not truly regulate it with consistent, autonomous precision. The verge escapement changed everything, introducing the world to the very sound of measured time, the steady, rhythmic tick-tock that would become the soundtrack to modern life. Imagine the problem faced by those early clockmakers. A heavy weight provides immense power, but if you simply let it fall, it will spin the clock's gears in a frantic, uncontrolled whirl, rendering the entire mechanism useless. The escapement was the genius solution, the gatekeeper that stood between that raw power and the gear train. Here's how it worked. The escapement was linked to the foliot, a horizontal bar with weights on its ends that swung back and forth. As the weight-driven main gear tried to turn, one of the pallets on the verge would catch a tooth on the gear, stopping it dead. The momentum of the swinging foliot would then twist the verge, releasing that tooth and allowing the gear to advance just one step before the opposite pallet caught the next tooth. This process created a continuous cycle of arrest and release, a dance of resistance and motion that transformed a crashing fall into a slow, stately procession. Each swing of the foliot allowed the gear train to advance by a tiny, precise amount, and each advance moved the clock's hands forward by a correspondingly small interval. This was the birth of truly autonomous mechanical time. The impact of this invention cannot be overstated. For the first time, clocks could achieve an accuracy within minutes per day, a staggering leap forward from the water clocks and sundials that might vary by half an hour or more. This new precision wasn't just a technical achievement, it reshaped human consciousness. The relentless, unwavering rhythm of the verge escapement created a new kind of time, abstract, uniform, and independent of human observation or natural cycles. It was time that ticked on identically, whether it was noon or midnight, summer or winter. This regularity allowed for the intricate scheduling of monastic life with unprecedented exactitude and gave burgeoning medieval towns a shared, objective rhythm around which to organize commerce, law, and social order. The clock was no longer just a display, it was an autonomous authority. Yet the story of the verge escapement is also a story of humble beginnings and incremental improvement. It was far from perfect. Its accuracy was heavily dependent on the force of the driving weight and the friction in the system, and it had a notorious defect known as recoil, where the gear would briefly reverse direction during the unlocking process, creating extra wear on the delicate components. But its very existence provided the essential foundation. For over 400 years, this mechanism was the cornerstone of all mechanical timekeeping, from the great cathedral clocks to the first domestic spring-driven timepieces. Every subsequent advancement in horology, from the pendulum to the hairspring, was essentially an effort to build a better oscillator to control the escapement's beat. This unassuming assembly of a rod and two tiny flags was the seed from which all modern timekeeping grew, a powerful testament to the idea that the smallest, most focused innovations can indeed set the most monumental changes in motion, driving progress forward one steady, measured tick at a time. While the verge escapement provided the steady heartbeat inside the clock tower, medieval craftsmen dreamed of building something far grander, not merely a timekeeper, but a vision of the entire universe in motion, a mechanical cosmos that would leave all who witnessed it breathless with wonder. This dream found its ultimate expression in the astronomical clock, a breathtaking fusion of art, science, and divine inspiration that transformed a town's central square into a stage for the greatest show on Earth, the dance of the heavens themselves. These were not simple clocks, they were cosmic theaters, intricate machines of staggering complexity, designed to do nothing less than replicate the ordered motion of God's creation. To stand before the great astronomical clock in Prague, Strasbourg, or Wells Cathedral was to witness a miracle of human ingenuity, a device that could simultaneously tell the time, track the phases of the moon, chart the sun's path through the zodiac, and predict the dates of moving religious feasts like Easter, all while putting on a theatrical performance of moving figures and chiming bells. That captivated entire cities. The sheer ambition behind these creations is almost overwhelming. Imagine the mind of a medieval clockmaker, tasked with designing a machine that could model the geocentric universe as they understood it, with the Earth at the center and the sun, moon, and planets revolving around it in perfectly circular, albeit complex, orbits. This required an astonishingly deep understanding of astronomy and an even more brilliant mastery of gearwork. The clock's internal mechanism became a physical analog computer, a labyrinth of precisely calculated gears with unique tooth counts and ratios. One gear might complete a full rotation in 29.5 days to mimic the lunar cycle, while another, with a more complex elliptical path, would account for the perceived retrograde motion of Mars. Each of these moving parts had to be hand-forged, hand-filed, and perfectly synchronized with all the others, a task of such meticulous difficulty that the completion of a major astronomical clock was often seen as a defining achievement for a city, a moment of civic pride that would be celebrated for generations. But the true genius of these clocks lay in their public face, the magnificent dial that translated this incredibly complex machinery into a spectacle of beauty and learning. The main dial was typically a vast astrolabe in motion, showing the position of the sun and moon against a starry backdrop of the zodiac. Around this, smaller dials might show the hour in both the modern 24-hour system and the older Italian or Babylonian time, the current date, and the phase of the moon, often represented by a shimmering, polished golden ball that would wax and wane. Yet the clock was more than a scientific instrument. It was a sermon in metal and paint. Apostles would process past a figure of Christ on the hour. A skeleton representing death would toll the bell, and figures of vanity and greed would shake their heads, reminding all viewers of the fleeting nature of earthly life and the eternal salvation that awaited the pious. This blend of science and morality was perfectly suited to the medieval worldview, which saw no conflict between understanding God's creation and worshipping the Creator. These monumental timepieces quickly became the pulsing heart of civic life, drawing crowds from the countryside and serving as the ultimate symbol of a town's wealth, sophistication, and divine favor. The clock regulated the rhythm of the marketplace, its bells signaling the start and end of the trading day. It was a living classroom where the illiterate and the learned alike could gather to learn about the movements of the planets and the calendar of the church. For a population that could not afford books and had no access to observatories, the astronomical clock was their window to the cosmos, a daily reminder that their lives, however small, were part of a vast, beautiful, and orderly divine plan. In an age before public museums or universal education, it stood as a free and accessible center for science, art, and spiritual contemplation, a testament to the belief that knowledge should be displayed proudly for the benefit of all. The legacy of these mechanical marvels stretches far beyond their medieval origins. They represent a pinnacle of pre-industrial engineering, a demonstration that with careful observation, patient craftsmanship, and profound creativity, humanity could build machines that mirrored the complexity of nature itself. They were the direct ancestors of the planetariums and orreries of the Enlightenment, and even the sophisticated computers we use today to model climate patterns or simulate galactic evolution. More importantly, they remind us of a time when timekeeping was not a solitary act of glancing at a wristwatch, but a shared, communal experience that connected people to the grand cycles of the universe. The astronomical clock did not just tell the time, it told people who they were, where they were in the cosmic order, and invited them to look up, both at the marvel of the machine and the heavens it so beautifully represented, and feel a sense of awe at their place within it all. But even as the great astronomical clocks captivated the public square, a quieter, more intimate form of timekeeping was burning in the homes and workshops of everyday people. In an age where nightfall plunged the world into a profound and pervasive darkness, the simple act of lighting a lamp was not just about illumination, it was about reclaiming the hours. And from this basic human need emerged a device of beautiful, practical genius, the lamp clock. This was timekeeping seamlessly integrated into the fabric of daily life, a technology that didn't just measure the night but actively pierced through it, turning the very fuel that provided light into a reliable meter for the passage of time. Imagine a medieval artisan working late by the faint glow of an oil lamp, his hands shaping leather or metal. With a lamp clock, he didn't need to step outside to check the stars or listen for a distant bell. He could simply glance at the oil level in his own lamp to see how much of the night remained for his labor. This was timekeeping at its most personal and pragmatic. The principle was brilliantly straightforward, a masterpiece of elegant simplicity. A typical lamp clock consisted of a reservoir, often made of pottery or metal, designed to hold a specific quantity of oil, usually enough to burn for a known number of hours. A wick made from twisted linen or cotton drew the oil up to the flame. The true innovation was in the calibration. The inside of the reservoir was often marked with a series of lines or notches, each representing a unit of time, perhaps an hour or a watch of the night. As the oil was consumed by the flame, the level would gradually drop past these markers, providing a clear and continuous visual indication of how much time had passed since the lamp was lit. In more sophisticated versions, the reservoir might be made of transparent horn or glass, or have a floating indicator that descended as the oil level fell, making the reading even more precise. This transformed an ordinary household object into a precise instrument, its gentle, flickering light serving a dual purpose of visibility and measurement. The designs of these clocks were as varied as the cultures that used them, reflecting local materials, aesthetics, and needs. In a humble European cottage, it might be little more than a shallow, wide-brimmed ceramic bowl with a simple mark scratched into its side. In a wealthy merchant's home or a monastic scriptorium, however, a lamp clock could be an object of real beauty, an ornate bronze or silver lantern with multiple wicks, finely engraved hour scales, and protective glass panels to shield the flame from drafts. The Islamic world, with its advanced knowledge of mathematics and mechanics, produced particularly refined examples, some of which even incorporated a primitive float mechanism that would trigger a small noise-making device when the oil reached a certain level, acting as an alarm. This diversity shows that the lamp clock was not a single invention but a widespread solution, independently arrived at across different societies, all united by the common challenge of navigating the darkness. The impact of this simple device on medieval life was profound. It extended the productive day, allowing craftsmen, scholars, and merchants to work or read long after the sun had set. It brought a new rhythm to the nocturnal hours within monasteries, where monks could use it to time their intervals between prayers during the long winter nights. For the average family, it provided a way to structure the evening, perhaps marking the time for a final meal or signaling when the children should be in bed. Its gentle, organic method of timekeeping based on the consumption of a resource also fostered a different, more tangible relationship with time's passage. Unlike the abstract tick of a mechanical clock, the sinking oil level was a visible, inevitable depletion, a quiet reminder that time, like the oil in the lamp, is a finite resource that is constantly being spent. The lamp clock stands as a perfect symbol of medieval ingenuity, a solution that is not overly complex but deeply intelligent, solving two fundamental human problems, light and time, with a single, graceful, and utterly practical invention. While the astronomical clock presented a visual spectacle of the cosmos, and the lamp clock offered a personal glow in the darkness, the most pervasive and powerful time signal in the medieval world was one that required no sight at all. It was a sound that rolled out over rooftops and fields, a deep, resonant voice that spoke to everyone simultaneously. This was the bell-striking mechanism, an innovation that transformed time from a visual observation into a shared auditory experience, weaving the hours into the very soundscape of daily life. Integrated into the heart of those great tower clocks, this automated system of hammers and bells did more than just announce the time. It orchestrated the rhythm of an entire community, creating a collective pulse that could be heard by the scholar in his study, the blacksmith at his forge, and the farmer in his distant field. For the first time in history, time had a voice, and it spoke with authority to all who could hear. The engineering behind this audible marvel was a masterpiece of medieval mechanics. The challenge was immense: to translate the steady, measured tick of the clock's escapement into a powerful, precise strike on a massive bronze bell that could weigh hundreds or even thousands of pounds. The solution was a separate gear train, a counting mechanism powered by the same weight that drove the clock. This train featured a specially shaped wheel, often called a locking plate or count wheel, with deep notches cut into its edge corresponding to the number of strikes required: one deep notch for 1 o'clock, 2 for 2 o'clock, and so on. As the clock's movement advanced, a lever would fall into these notches in sequence. At the top of the hour, this would release a separate hammer mechanism, often a heavy weight that would drop onto or be swung into the bell, producing that iconic, deep-throated toll. The count wheel ensured the correct number of strikes, while a clever locking device prevented it from running away and striking uncontrollably. This was automation on a grand, public scale, a machine reliably performing a task that had previously required a dedicated human bell ringer to be always present and alert. The social impact of this innovation was nothing short of revolutionary. In an era where literacy was the exception rather than the rule, the audible bell made timekeeping universally accessible. You didn't need to be able to read a clock face or understand complex astrological charts. You simply needed to count the booms echoing through the town. This auditory time democratized punctuality, creating a new, shared discipline that governed life for everyone. The bells marked the orlog, the agreed-upon public time, which took precedence over individual sundial readings or personal guesses. They signaled the precise opening and closing of the city gates, a matter of security and safety. They dictated the start and end of the workday for the guilds, ensuring fair labor practices and settling disputes over wages paid by the hour. They called citizens to mass, announced the opening of the marketplace, and imposed the evening curfew, their sound carrying the force of law and custom. The entire economic and social machinery of the medieval town began to synchronize itself to this relentless, audible rhythm. This shared soundtrack fostered a powerful new sense of communal identity. The town bell, or bankloke, was a potent symbol of civic independence and self-governance, its voice distinguishing the ordered life within the walls from the more fluid, sun-dependent rhythms of the surrounding countryside. The specific tone and character of a town's bell became a part of its unique identity, a sound that meant home to its inhabitants. Furthermore, the bell's voice was deeply woven into the human experience of time itself. The sound of the bell marking the hour created a punctuation in the day, a moment of collective pause and reflection. The death knell for a citizen, the joyful peal for a wedding, the alarm bell for a fire, these were all variations on the timekeeper's theme, using the same instrument to mark both the quantitative passage of hours and the qualitative, emotional milestones of human life. The bell-striking mechanism, therefore, was more than a noisemaker. It was the agent of a profound cultural shift, forging individual lives into a synchronized community and embedding the abstract concept of measured time into the very heart of human consciousness through the powerful, unforgettable medium of sound. Yet for all the grandeur of the public clock tower with its booming bells and astronomical displays, a far more subtle and intellectually profound challenge was being tackled in the private studies of the most brilliant minds of the age. They had discovered a secret: the sun, that most reliable of all timekeepers, is actually a terrible clock. This wasn't a flaw in the sun itself, but a consequence of the Earth's imperfect orbit. Our planet doesn't travel around the sun in a perfect circle at a constant speed. Its path is elliptical, and its pace varies throughout the year. This means that the length of a true solar day, the time from one solar noon to the next, when the sun is at its highest point, actually changes slightly from day to day. A sundial which shows this apparent solar time might be perfectly accurate to the sun's position, but it would sometimes run several minutes fast compared to a mechanical clock keeping a steady, average, mean solar time, and sometimes several minutes slow. For most people, this discrepancy was irrelevant, but for astronomers, navigators, and scholars, it was a problem that demanded a solution. And that solution was one of the most sophisticated and elegant devices ever conceived: the equation clock. This remarkable machine was a horological philosopher, a timepiece that held two different truths in its mechanical mind simultaneously. It knew both the steady, artificial beat of mean time that governed human schedules and the variable, natural rhythm of the sun's actual journey across the sky. Its genius lay in a component called the equation of time cam, a specially shaped, kidney bean-like metal disc that was crafted with breathtaking precision. This cam was a physical graph of the sun's annual irregularity, its undulating edge representing the cumulative difference between sun time and clock time for every single day of the year. As the clock's mechanism turned this cam once per year, a follower arm would ride along its edge. This arm was connected to the clock's display, often a second-minute hand or a special equation dial, and it would gently push the indication forwards or backwards, subtly adding or subtracting minutes from the steady time shown by the main clockwork. The result was a display that could show either mean time or apparent solar time at a glance, a continuous, automated correction that reconciled the messy reality of the cosmos with the human desire for perfect, orderly measurement. Owning such an instrument was the ultimate symbol of intellectual prestige and immense wealth. An equation clock was not merely a tool, it was a statement. It declared that its owner, be it a royal court, a powerful bishop, or a pioneering astronomer like Tycho Brahe, possessed not only the resources to commission such a complex masterpiece, but also the sophisticated understanding to appreciate its purpose. It sat at the pinnacle of the clockmaker's art, requiring the maker to be part astronomer, part mathematician, and part mechanical genius. The creation of the cam alone was a monumental task based on centuries of accumulated astronomical observation and new, precise calculations that were at the very cutting edge of Renaissance science. These clocks were often housed in exquisite cabinets of ebony and gilt bronze, transforming a scientific instrument into a work of art that celebrated humanity's growing power to decode the universe's deepest secrets. The equation clock represents a pivotal moment in our relationship with time and nature. It wasn't an attempt to dominate or ignore the natural world's irregularities. Instead, it was an effort to understand them so completely that they could be built into a machine, an act of profound reverence and reconciliation. It acknowledged that the universe operates on its own complex terms, but it also demonstrated that the human intellect could comprehend those terms and create a bridge between celestial truth and earthly practicality. This delicate dance between mechanics and astronomy paved the way for the next great leap in precision, the pendulum clock. By first understanding and accounting for the sun's irregularities, these master clockmakers highlighted the need for and pointed the way toward a new level of accuracy in timekeeping itself, proving that the quest for perfect time was not just about counting seconds, but about deepening our conversation with the cosmos. While the verge escapement provided the crucial locking and releasing mechanism that gave the mechanical clock its heartbeat, that heartbeat would have been a frantic, runaway pulse without a second, equally vital component working in perfect harmony with it, the foliate balance. This deceptively simple-looking device, essentially just a horizontal bar with adjustable weights on each end, was the first serious attempt to impose order on the raw, unchecked power of a falling weight, acting as the primitive but effective brain of the early mechanical clock. Its operation was a beautiful, almost meditative dance of physics. The foliate was linked directly to the verge escapement's vertical shaft. As the escape wheel tried to turn, a pallet would catch a tooth, and the shock of this arrest would set the foliate bar spinning back and forth on its axis. The inertia of those weighted ends would then twist the verge the other way, releasing the tooth and allowing the wheel to advance just one step before the process repeated. This continuous, oscillating swing left, right was the rhythm that defined early mechanical time, a slow, stately wobble that transformed a crashing descent into a measured procession. The true genius of the foliate lay in its elegant adjustability, a feature that showcased a deep, practical understanding of mechanics long before the formal laws of physics were written. The timekeeper could literally tune the clock's speed by sliding the weights inwards or outwards along the bar. Moving the weights closer to the central axis reduced the moment of inertia, allowing the foliate to swing back and forth more quickly, and thus making the clock run faster. Pushing them farther out increased the inertia, slowing the swing and delaying the release of each tooth, thereby slowing the entire clock down. This was regulation by trial and error, a hands-on process of listening to the clock's rhythm against a known reference like a sundial and patiently adjusting until the two were in closer agreement. It was far from perfect, The system was easily disturbed by changes in friction or the driving force, but it was a revolutionary leap from having no control at all. For the first time, humanity could not only build a machine that ticked, but could also, in a rudimentary way, dictate the pace of its ticking. This humble apparatus, with its ungainly swaying motion, was the workhorse that powered the first great age of public timekeeping. For over 300 years, it was the standard regulator in every significant clock, from the monumental cathedral towers that dominated European skylines to the earliest domestic clocks owned by the exceedingly wealthy. Its reliability, coupled with the verge escapement, was enough to achieve an accuracy that was breathtaking for its time, keeping time to within perhaps 15 minutes a day, a monumental achievement compared to the variable hours of water clocks or sundials. This was sufficient precision to synchronize the life of an entire town, to ensure monks woke for their nocturnal prayers, and to instill in society a new belief in mechanical regularity. The foliate balance, in all its simplicity, made the concept of shared, public, mechanical time not just a fantastical idea, but a practical, audible reality that echoed through the streets every hour. Yet the story of the foliate is also a powerful testament to the iterative, cumulative nature of engineering progress. It was not invented in a single moment of brilliance, but evolved slowly through decades of tinkering, observation, and incremental improvement. Early versions were simple crossbars, but later designs evolved into more balanced and stable shapes, like the circular balance wheel that would eventually replace it. Clockmakers experimented with different materials and weight distributions, slowly teasing out more consistent performance from the basic principle. Its greatest legacy, therefore, is not the device itself, but the door it opened. The foliate balance proved that regulating time mechanically was possible. It identified the core problem, controlling the release of energy, and provided the first working solution, establishing a fundamental principle that all future regulators would follow. It was the essential, clumsy, but indispensable precursor that made the pendulum clock possible, serving as the foundational lesson upon which all modern horology was built. The foliate's slow, steady wobble was the first confident step on the long road to precision, a testament to the power of a simple idea to set a revolution in motion. While the Nocturnal masterfully unlocked the secrets of the Starry Vault, another ingenious device turned its gaze to the most prominent and changeable feature of the night sky, the moon. The Nocturnal, a specialized and often exquisitely crafted instrument, was designed specifically for lunar timekeeping, offering a reliable method to read the hour on those nights when clouds veiled the stars or when the moon's brilliant glow outshone all but the brightest celestial points. This was not merely a variant of the Nocturnal. It was a testament to the medieval mind's deep desire to understand and utilize every facet of the cosmos, recognizing that the moon, with its predictable and beautifully complex cycle, held the key to a different kind of nocturnal clock, one that changed its face throughout the month but never lost its rhythm. Operating a Nocturnal was a delicate and thoughtful process that connected the user directly to the lunar month. The device typically featured 2 or 3 rotating discs. The user would first set the larger dial to the current date, aligning it with a scale that represented the age of the moon, essentially how many days had passed since the last new moon. This crucial step calibrated the entire instrument to the specific phase, whether it was a slender crescent, a perfect full circle, or a waning gibbous. Then, holding the instrument upright, the observer would sight the moon through a central hole, often aligning a pointer with the moon's horns or its center. By rotating a second inner arm to match this lunar alignment, the user could then read the approximate time from a calibrated scale on the outer edge. This process transformed the moon's position from a simple celestial observation into a quantitative measurement, a practical tool for anyone navigating, traveling, or simply structuring their activities under the moon's watchful eye. The Nocturlabe's value was particularly profound for travelers and scholars who operated on the move. While a town might have its great clock tower and a monastery its mechanical alarm, a lone traveler on a dark road or a scholar on a remote research trip had no such luxuries. The Nocturlabe, often crafted from polished brass or even ivory for the wealthy, was compact and portable, a personal timekeeper that could be carried in a pouch and deployed in moments. Its reliance on the moon made it exceptionally useful during the fortnight surrounding the full moon, when lunar light was brightest and travel by night was not only possible but sometimes preferable to avoid the heat of the day. For a merchant caravan crossing a desert or a pilgrim on a long journey, the ability to tell time by the moon provided a sense of order and security in the vast, unknown darkness, turning a solitary experience into one guided by ancient celestial patterns. This device also highlights a fascinating aspect of medieval cosmology. The moon was not just a passive light in the sky, but an active, influential body whose phases were deeply woven into the fabric of daily life. Agriculture, medicine, and even the bleeding of patients were often scheduled according to lunar cycles, based on the belief that the moon's gravitational pull affected not just the tides but the fluids within the human body and the sap within plants. The Nocturlabe, therefore, was more than a timepiece. It was an instrument for harmonizing human activity with these perceived lunar influences. It allowed a farmer to know the best night to plant by the moon's light or a physician to consult its phase before a procedure, embodying a holistic worldview where timekeeping, astronomy, astrology, and practical life were seamlessly interconnected. The Nocturlabe invites us to appreciate a time when humanity looked up not just to find direction, but to find a deeper resonance with the rhythms of the cosmos, finding a faithful, if changing, guide in the pale, luminous face of the moon. While the Nocturlabe guided travelers by the moon's gentle light, another timekeeping method harnessed a far more primal and unpredictable element: fire itself. The fire clock represents perhaps the most straightforward and visceral approach to measuring time in the medieval world, a technology so simple it borders on the elemental. Imagine a length of cord specially treated to ensure a slow, steady, and predictable burn, or a fuse crafted from a precise mixture of combustible materials. By marking this cord at specific intervals corresponding to known units of time, perhaps a hand's breadth for every hour, a user could literally watch time burn away before their eyes. This was timekeeping stripped down to its most fundamental principle: the consumption of a resource at a known rate. There were no intricate gears to craft, no water to freeze, and no need for the sun or stars to be visible. In the darkness of a mine, the tense quiet of a military watch, or the focused atmosphere of an alchemist's workshop, the steady advance of a glowing ember along a prescribed path offered a reliable, hands-free, and remarkably portable solution to the problem of measuring duration. The true genius of the fire clock lay in its rugged adaptability to demanding environments where more delicate instruments would inevitably fail. For soldiers standing guard on a cold, windy castle rampart, a water clock would freeze solid and a candle would be extinguished by the slightest gust. A length of slow match, however, borrowed from the artilleryman's kit, could continue to smolder reliably, its incandescent tip providing a subtle glow to see by while its consumption marked the slow passage of a watch duty. In the depths of a mine, where damp conditions and total darkness rendered most timekeepers useless, a treated rope fuse could be lit at the entrance and would burn steadily, giving miners a rough estimate of how long they had been underground and perhaps signaling when it was time to return to the surface for fresh air. This brutal simplicity made the fire clock a technology of the frontier, of the battlefield, and of the workshop, places where practicality trumped elegance and absolute reliability was the only currency that mattered. Perhaps the most fascinating application of this technology was in the proto-scientific worlds of alchemy and metallurgy. These early chemists and metalworkers operated on precise, often secretive, recipes that required exact timing for success. A distillation might need to be maintained at a specific temperature for a very specific number of hours. The process of tempering a fine sword blade required heating it for a precise duration before quenching it to achieve the perfect balance of hardness and flexibility. For these critical operations, a fire clock was the ideal tool. An alchemist could light a prepared fuse at the start of a process and then devote his full attention to his work, knowing that when the flame reached a certain mark on the bench, the crucial moment had arrived. This hands-free aspect was its greatest advantage, allowing for undivided concentration on a delicate task while the relentless, silent burn of the cord kept track of the necessary intervals in the background. The legacy of the fire clock is a testament to the medieval knack for appropriating technology from one field and applying it creatively to another. The slow match used in these timekeepers was essentially the same technology that would later be used to fire cannons and matchlock muskets, where timing was equally a matter of life and death. This cross-pollination of ideas from the battlefield to the laboratory highlights the interconnectedness of innovation. While it never achieved the artistic grandeur of an astronomical clock or the mechanical sophistication of a verge escapement, the fire clock fulfilled a vital niche. It served as a rugged, dependable, and utterly pragmatic tool for those working at the edges of society and science, proving that sometimes the most effective innovation isn't about complexity, but about understanding the fundamental properties of the world, like the steady consumption of a burning cord, and harnessing that simple truth to bring order and measurement to the most challenging circumstances. But for all the stationary grandeur of the great church dials, timekeeping was also embarking on a deeply personal journey, shrinking from the monumental to the handheld. This was the era of the Sundial, a term often used for the incredible variety of portable sundials that put the power of the sun directly into the pocket of the individual traveler, scholar, or merchant. Imagine a medieval merchant setting out on the Silk Road or a Renaissance scholar traveling between universities. They couldn't carry a town clock with them, and the celestial navigation of the Nocturnal required a clear night sky. The portable sundial was their perfect solution, a personal timekeeper that could be deployed in an instant on a sunny windowsill, a tree stump, or a rock by the roadside, providing a private, reliable reference point anywhere their travels took them. This shift from public, communal time to personal, portable time was a quiet revolution, foreshadowing our modern world of wristwatches and smartphones. The sophistication of these pocket-sized marvels is truly astonishing. To be accurate, a sundial must be properly oriented to true north, and its central gnomon must be set at an angle matching the user's latitude. The makers of these portable dials solved these problems with elegant, integrated mechanics. Many featured a built-in magnetic compass, often hidden under a lid or within the body of the device itself, ensuring it could always be aligned correctly with the meridian. But the true stroke of genius was the adjustable gnomon. Unlike the fixed gnomon on a garden dial, these portable versions had a tiny stylus that could be pivoted to the correct angle for the user's latitude. The dial itself was frequently engraved with multiple sets of hour lines for different cities or latitude bands. A traveler moving from London to Rome would simply adjust the gnomon to a steeper angle and follow the hour lines engraved for more southern climes. This wasn't a simple toy, it was a precision instrument of remarkable adaptability. The forms these devices took were as varied as they were beautiful. Some, often called diptych dials, were crafted from two small wooden or ivory panels hinged together like a book. When closed, it was protected in its owner's pocket. When opened, a string stretched between the two halves acted as the gnomon, and the inner surfaces were lavishly engraved with hour lines, calendars, and even astrological charts. Others were made of polished brass or silver, designed to be hung from a belt. For the wealthiest patrons, craftsmen created exquisite ring dials, wearable timekeepers made of gold or silver that could literally tell the time on your finger. By aligning a tiny hole in the ring with a beam of sunlight, the hour could be read from a scale engraved on the band. These objects were not merely tools, they were status symbols reflecting the owner's wealth, education, and connection to the new worlds of science and exploration. The enduring popularity of the Sundial, well into the age of mechanical spring-driven clocks, speaks volumes about its utility and reliability. A mechanical clock was expensive, prone to jostling damage on a journey, and required regular winding. A portable sundial, however, was affordable, virtually indestructible, and never needed rewinding. It just needed the sun. Its persistence demonstrates that new technology doesn't always immediately obliterate the old, especially when the older technology offers an unbeatable combination of simplicity, cost, and dependability. The Sundial represents the ultimate democratization of celestial timekeeping, a device that empowered the individual to capture a sliver of the sun's authority and carry it with them. A personal, silent conversation with the cosmos that unfolded in the palm of the hand, making every sunny spot a potential clock face and every traveler their own timekeeper. Within the silent, stone-walled scriptoriums of medieval monasteries, time was not a linear path but a sacred, repeating cycle, a wheel of liturgical seasons, feast days, and astronomical events that governed every moment of monastic life. To track this breathtakingly complex calendar required more than a simple chart. It demanded a machine of devotion and intellect, a mechanical marvel known as the Wheel of Time. This was no ordinary clock, but a monumental rotary calendar, an intricate assembly of geared discs and carefully inscribed pointers that functioned as the administrative and spiritual heart of the monastery, a physical embodiment of the eternal, turning rhythm of the church year. Imagine a large wooden or brass wheel mounted on a wall, its face a labyrinth of concentric rings, each one engraved with a different layer of sacred time. One ring might list the movable feasts like Easter, whose date shifts each year based on the spring equinox and the phases of the moon. Another would mark the fixed sanctorial, the feast days of saints that always fell on the same calendar date. Yet another could track the solar cycle or the zodiac, connecting the divine schedule to the grand motions of the cosmos itself. A single pointer, advanced by a hidden gear mechanism linked to the main clock, would make one full revolution per year, its slow, inexorable crawl across this dense landscape of dates ensuring that no holy day, no matter how obscure, would ever be missed. The creation of such a device was an act of profound scholarship as much as it was one of craftsmanship, designing the gearing ratios to accurately model the intricate paschal cycle used to calculate Easter. A 19-year pattern reconciling the solar year with the lunar month required a deep understanding of mathematics and astronomy that rivaled that of the greatest secular scholars. The monk tasked with its operation and maintenance was not merely a mechanic. He was a keeper of chronological knowledge, interpreting the wheel's position and translating its mechanical output into the daily schedule of prayers, masses, and readings. The wheel itself was often a beautiful object, adorned with painted illustrations of the saints or astrological symbols, transforming a practical tool into a work of devotional art. Its very presence was a continuous sermon, a visual reminder that the life of the monastery was harmonized with a celestial and divine order far greater than themselves, that their prayers rose and fell in time with the turning of the heavens and the wheel of the church year. This mechanical calendar's impact extended far beyond the monastery walls, serving as the primary reference for setting the religious calendar for the entire surrounding diocese. Local priests would travel to the monastic house to learn the correct dates for upcoming feasts and fasts, making the Wheel of Time the de facto server for the region's spiritual schedule. In an era before printed calendars were widely available, this device was the ultimate authority, its carefully calculated rotations ensuring that everyone from the bishop to the humble farmer knew when to celebrate, when to mourn, and when to pray. It synchronized the spiritual life of an entire community, creating a shared rhythm of observance that bound society together in common faith and practice. The steady turn of this geared wheel, powered by the monastery's clock, did more than just track days. It wove the relentless, mechanical tick of measured time into the rich, cyclical tapestry of sacred tradition, proving that the most advanced technology of the age could be harnessed in the service of timeless devotion. Yet even as the Wheel of Time turned with solemn, sacred purpose in the monastery, a far more playful and spectacular evolution of sand-based timekeeping was captivating the courts of kings and emperors. The hourglass had mastered the art of measuring short intervals with flawless consistency, but a new invention sought to push that humble medium into the realm of pure theater. This was the Klepsamia, a term derived from the Greek words for sand and to steal, and it represented a breathtaking fusion of timekeeping and automation, where the steady trickle of grains was no longer just a measure of moments, but the very engine of wonder itself. Imagine an elaborate tableau, a miniature world of castles and knights, where the turning of an hourglass doesn't just signal the end of a debate, but triggers a hidden cascade of gears and levers. As the final grains of sand fall, a drawbridge lowers, a procession of tiny automata emerges, a bell rings or a bird begins to sing. This was the Klepsamia's magic. It transformed the passive observation of time's passage into an active, anticipated event, a scheduled spectacle that blurred the line between science, art, and entertainment. The mechanics behind these wondrous devices were a masterpiece of medieval engineering ingenuity, taking the simple principle of the hourglass and scaling it up into a complex control system. At its heart was still the familiar dual-chambered glass, but now its function was far more sophisticated. Instead of simply measuring a fixed interval, the Klepsamia's sand flow was often harnessed to regulate a much larger, weight-driven mechanical movement. As the sand poured from the upper reservoir into the lower one, it could act as a braking or governing mechanism on a gear train, its constant flow ensuring a smooth and predictable release of energy. In other designs, the falling sand itself provided the motive power, turning a lightweight paddle wheel or drum that was connected to the automata. The true genius, however, lay in the triggering mechanisms. Craftsmen devised clever systems where the emptying of the upper bulb would release a catch or trip a lever, initiating a pre-programmed sequence of actions. This could involve redirecting the sand flow to a different set of channels, releasing a counterweight to set figures in motion, or engaging a separate gear train entirely. The sand became both the timer and the trigger, a silent, granular conductor orchestrating a mechanical ballet. These intricate marvels found their perfect stage in the lavish courts of Renaissance Europe and the Islamic world, where rulers used them as powerful tools of political theater and diplomatic display. A visiting ambassador might be greeted not just with words but with a Klepsamia-driven spectacle, a model ship that sailed across a table as a timer emptied, symbolizing prosperous trade, or figures reenacting a mythological tale to flatter the guest's lineage. For the monarch, possessing such a device was a potent status symbol, a public demonstration of their ability to command not only people but the very laws of physics and time itself. It showed that their court was a center of not just wealth, but of the most advanced technical and artistic innovation. The Klepsamia was entertainment, but it was also a form of soft power, dazzling visitors and reinforcing the ruler's image as a sophisticated and enlightened patron of the arts and sciences. Beyond the courtly spectacle, the principles pioneered by the Klepsamia had a profound and lasting impact on the history of technology. These devices were among the earliest examples of programmable automation, a direct precursor to the complex sequence controllers that would later run industrial looms and, eventually, computers. The concept of using a measured substance, in this case sand, to control a separate mechanical process is a fundamental principle of feedback and regulation. While these early examples were designed for delight rather than industry, they provided a crucial proof of concept. They demonstrated that machines could be designed to perform a series of actions at predetermined times without human intervention, planting the seed for the automated world we now inhabit. The Klepsamia's legacy, therefore, is not merely one of forgotten amusement. It stands as a beautiful and important milestone in our long journey to delegate control to machines, a moment when the simple, ancient trickle of sand became the catalyst for a new dream of automated wonder, proving that the pursuit of precision and the pursuit of magic have always been intimately and brilliantly intertwined. While water and sand offered reliable flow for timekeeping, they were still at the mercy of their environment. Water could freeze or evaporate, and even the best oils could thicken in the cold. But what if you could harness a liquid that remained stubbornly consistent, a substance that defied temperature swings and flowed with a uniquely heavy, predictable smoothness? This quest for perfection led the most daring medieval horologists to one of the most fascinating and hazardous materials on Earth, mercury. The Mercury clock represents a breathtaking leap into experimental horology, a daring departure from tradition that saw clockmakers trade wood and water for a shimmering, silvery metal that was liquid at room temperature. This was not a technology for the village craftsman. It was the domain of visionary inventors and wealthy patrons who sought to push the boundaries of accuracy by conquering the last great enemy of the clockmaker, thermal expansion. The fundamental problem Mercury solved was one that had plagued all mechanical timekeepers since their invention. Most materials expand when heated and contract when cooled. In a pendulum clock, a metal pendulum rod will grow minutely longer in the summer heat, slowing its swing, and contract in the winter cold, speeding it up. Similarly, the oils used to lubricate clocks would thicken in the cold, increasing friction and altering the beat. Mercury, however, boasts an exceptionally low coefficient of thermal expansion. This meant that a column of mercury would change its volume far less than an equivalent column of water or alcohol for the same temperature change. This remarkable stability made it the perfect candidate for a precision regulator. Inventors designed intricate mercury pendulums where the swinging bob was not a solid weight but a container filled with this liquid metal. As the temperature rose and the pendulum rod would normally expand and slow down, the mercury in the bob would also expand, but its center of mass would rise in a way that actually compensated for the rod's lengthening, keeping the pendulum's effective length and therefore its period of swing almost perfectly constant. This was a system that could literally correct itself against thermal error, a brilliant piece of physical intuition translated into horological genius. The use of mercury extended beyond the pendulum into the very heart of the clock's powertrain. Some of the most ambitious designs used mercury as a driving force, replacing the traditional falling weight with a sophisticated sealed system of interconnected chambers and siphons. Gravity would pull the heavy liquid from an upper reservoir to a lower one, and its flow, far smoother and more consistent than water could ever be, would turn a wheel or power a mechanism. The sheer density of Mercury meant it could store a tremendous amount of potential energy in a relatively small space, allowing for more compact and powerful movements. Other designs used Mercury in sophisticated barometric compensators, acknowledging that changes in air pressure could also affect a clock's performance. By connecting a Mercury-filled U-tube to the clock's mechanism, inventors could create a system that adjusted for these atmospheric shifts, a level of precision that seems almost unbelievable for the era. Of course, working with Mercury came with a terrible, hidden cost that its medieval handlers could never have fully understood. The mesmerizing quicksilver fluid we now know is a potent neurotoxin, its vapors causing tremors, memory loss, and madness with prolonged exposure. We can only wonder at the fate of the brilliant but unprotected craftsmen who spent years breathing in the fumes from their open workbenches, handling this beautiful, deadly liquid in pursuit of horological perfection. Their story adds a layer of poignant tragedy to these experimental marvels, a reminder that the path of innovation is often paved with unknown dangers and personal sacrifice. The Mercury clock, therefore, stands as a powerful monument to both breathtaking ingenuity and the hidden perils of exploration, a device that flowed with the relentless spirit of discovery, even as its very essence carried a silent, heavy price. Yet, even as the Mercury clock pushed the boundaries of material science, another invention sought to achieve a different kind of perfection, not through experimental liquids, but through the ultimate synthesis of existing knowledge. Imagine taking the celestial computer of the Astrolabe, with all its intricate star charts and complex scales, and merging it seamlessly with the relentless, automated heartbeat of the mechanical clock. The result would be the Astrolabic clock, a device that stands as perhaps the most intellectually ambitious and breathtakingly beautiful achievement of medieval horology. This was not merely a clock with astronomical features. It was a full-fledged mechanical astrolabe, a portable universe driven by gears and springs that could display the time, the positions of the sun and stars, and the phases of the moon all on a single, magnificent dial. It represented the culmination of centuries of progress in both astronomy and mechanics, a perfect marriage where the analog calculation of the heavens was automated by the precise tick of a mechanical movement, bringing the power of the cosmos directly into the scholar's study or the navigator's cabin. Crafting such a device required a mind that could bridge two vastly different worlds. The clockmaker had to be a master astronomer, deeply versed in the complex geometry of the celestial sphere to accurately translate the movements of the planets into a series of precisely calculated gear ratios. Simultaneously, he had to be a genius metalworker, capable of engraving the finest details onto multiple rotating brass discs or tympans, each representing the night sky for a different latitude. These tympans were stacked like the layers of an astrolabe, but instead of being manually rotated by the user, they were driven by the clock's mainspring or weights, turning in perfect synchronization with the actual sky overhead. The rete, the delicate, star-pricked fretwork that represented the fixed stars, now became a rotating component of the clockwork, its slow dance across the dial mirroring the nightly rotation of the constellations. This was engineering of staggering complexity, where every gear tooth had to be calculated to model a cosmic truth, transforming the clock from a time teller into a true orrery, a mechanical simulation of the solar system itself. The sheer utility of such an instrument is difficult to overstate. For a wealthy Renaissance prince or a powerful bishop, an astrolabic clock was the ultimate cabinet of wonders, a centerpiece that demonstrated their patronage of the arts and sciences. It served as an educational tool, allowing a scholar to demonstrate the principles of planetary motion or predict an eclipse without ever needing to step outside. For a navigator planning a voyage, though such a delicate instrument would seldom go to sea, it could be used ashore to calculate tidal patterns, chart the moon's phases, and determine the best times for departure based on celestial events. It condensed the entire knowledge of the cosmos into a single, automated device, making the most advanced astronomical science of the age accessible, tangible, and undeniably beautiful. It was a symbol that humanity was not just observing the universe, but was now beginning to replicate its workings through the genius of machinery. What makes the Astrolabic clock so profoundly significant, however, is what it represents about the evolution of knowledge itself. It is the physical embodiment of a conversation between the Islamic world, which perfected the astrolabe, and the European world, which was pioneering the mechanical clock. These two great technological traditions, which had developed along separate paths, finally converged in this one magnificent machine. The Astrolabic clock stands as a powerful rebuttal to the idea of isolated innovation, proving instead that the greatest leaps forward occur at the intersections of different fields and cultures. It took the ancient contemplative art of astronomy, a science of observation and calculation, and fused it with the new dynamic science of mechanics, a discipline of automation and power. This fusion created something entirely new, a device that could think about the heavens for you, turning the slow, patient work of the astronomer into a continuous, automated performance. In the Astrolabic clock, we see the final, glorious flowering of the medieval worldview, where the universe was seen as a perfectly ordered creation, and the highest calling of humanity was to build machines that reflected and celebrated that divine order in every ticking, turning gear. But even the most reliable candle clock had a frustrating and dangerous limitation. A single gust of wind or an accidental bump could extinguish the flame, plunging the user into darkness and completely resetting the count of time. For those who worked through the night in drafty castles, damp mines, or bustling kitchens, this vulnerability was a constant source of interruption and risk. The solution emerged in a beautiful piece of pragmatic design, the candle lantern clock. This ingenious hybrid didn't just pair a candle with a protective housing, it fully integrated the two, creating a single, robust instrument that shielded the timekeeping flame from the very elements that sought to snuff it out. Imagine a metal or wooden lantern, perhaps with panels of thinly scraped horn or even early glass to diffuse the light, but on the inside, instead of a simple shelf for a candle, you would find a carefully calibrated scale marked along the lantern's central pillar. The candle itself, made to a specific thickness to ensure a consistent burn rate, would be fixed in place, and as it burned down throughout the night, the descending flame would pass by these hour markings, allowing the worker to literally see how much of their shift or task remained, all without ever exposing the precious flame to the outside air. This design was a masterclass in optimizing for real-world conditions, and its applications were as varied as they were vital. In the pitch-black depths of a medieval mine, where the air was often damp and still, a simple candle provided the only light for a miner to see the ore vein he was hacking at. A traditional candle clock would be useless here, easily knocked over or drowned by dripping water. But a candle lantern clock, with its sturdy metal cage and transparent panels, could be hung from a timber or set on a rocky ledge, its protected flame burning steadily while its internal scale allowed the miner to track the length of his exhausting and dangerous shift underground. Up in the monastery scriptorium, a monk painstakingly illuminating a manuscript faced a different challenge. He needed unwavering, consistent light to execute the finest details of his work, and he needed to know when it was time to stop for the next canonical hour of prayer. His candle lantern clock provided both, a steady, draft-free glow that wouldn't flicker and ruin a delicate brushstroke, and a clear time scale that ensured his devotional schedule remained perfectly synchronized with his creative labor. The true brilliance of these devices often lay in their audible alarms, adapted for environments where watching a scale was not always possible. Some models incorporated a clever adaptation of the embedded weight system. As the candle burned down to a specific hour mark, it would melt through a thin thread holding a small metal weight inside the lantern's protective casing. This weight would then drop onto a metal plate or a small bell housed safely at the base of the lantern, creating a distinct ping or clang that could be heard over the din of a kitchen or the rhythmic crash of a blacksmith's hammer. This meant a cook could focus on tending multiple pots over a fire, knowing a bell would signal when to remove a roast, or a watchman on his rounds could be alerted to the changing of the guard without having to constantly squint at a flame in the dark. This fusion of light and sound, all contained within a single, portable, and resilient unit, made the candle lantern clock an indispensable tool for the nocturnal economy, a testament to an era of innovation that sought not just to measure time, but to make its passage visible, audible, and manageable in the most challenging of environments. It was a technology that truly brightened both space and schedule, proving that the most elegant solutions are often those that address the messy complexities of everyday life. While the candle lantern clock brilliantly combined light and timekeeping in a portable package, another innovation was mastering the ancient power of water to create the medieval world's most reliable and autonomous wake-up call. Deep within the silent, cold corridors of a monastery long before dawn, the only sound might be the gentle, hypnotic drip of water, a sound that was not a natural leak, but the precisely measured heartbeat of a machine counting down the moments until it would shatter the silence with a startling clang. This was the water-driven alarm, a masterpiece of early automation that used the relentless, predictable flow of water to perform a task that had always required human vigilance, the act of waking up. For monks observing the divine office, the night was divided into specific periods of prayer, and missing the appointed hour for matins or lauds was a serious spiritual failing. The water-driven alarm removed human error from this sacred equation, ensuring that the call to prayer would sound with a mechanical certainty that no sleeping brother could ignore. The genius of these devices lay in their elegant application of simple hydraulic principles. The most common design was a clever evolution of the water clock. Imagine a large container that would slowly fill with water from a regulated drip feed. Inside this container, a lightweight bowl or a hollow copper ball would float on the rising water. This float was connected by a fine string or a thin metal lever to a counterweight poised above a large metal plate or bell. As the water level climbed hour by hour, the float would rise with it, its upward movement carefully calibrated against a time scale. The moment the water reached the predetermined level for the alarm, the rising float would trigger a release mechanism. This could be as simple as tilting a lever that disengaged a catch, allowing the heavy counterweight to suddenly drop. The weight would then plunge onto the waiting bell, creating a loud, resonant clangor that echoed through the stone dormitory, rousing every monk from his slumber with a shock of sound that was both abrupt and divinely punctual. This was more than just a clever trick. It was one of the earliest examples of programmable automation. The monk in charge of the device, often the horologist of the monastery, could set the alarm for different times by adjusting the fill rate of the water or by changing the water level at which the trigger was engaged. This allowed the community to adapt their schedule to the changing length of nights throughout the year, waking earlier in the deep of winter and later in the summer. This adjustability transformed the device from a simple timer into a programmable system, a direct mechanical ancestor of the digital alarms we set on our phones today. Its operation required no human presence once it was set. It was a machine entrusted with a critical responsibility, a silent, patient sentinel of the night whose only purpose was to faithfully convert the steady flow of water into a perfectly timed auditory command. The impact of this invention rippled far beyond the monastery walls, though its birth was undoubtedly within them. The principles of float valves, siphons, and hydraulic triggers mastered by these monastic engineers would become the foundational ideas for countless industrial innovations centuries later. The automated float valve that now controls the water level in your toilet tank, or the sophisticated hydraulic systems that operate heavy machinery, both share a conceptual lineage with this humble monastic alarm. It represented a monumental shift in human thinking, the moment we began to design machines that could not only measure time but could also act upon that measurement independently, initiating a predetermined sequence of events without any human intervention. The water-driven alarm didn't just wake sleeping monks. It woke the world to the incredible potential of automation, proving that even the simplest natural force, like the flow of water, could be harnessed to create a precise and reliable mechanical servant. While the water-driven alarm mastered the art of waking souls with mechanical certainty, another class of timekeeper was engaged in a far more patient and poetic task, tracking the gentle, cyclical rhythm of the moon as it waxed and waned across the night sky. This was the lunar calendar clock, a device that did more than just count the hours. It connected the relentless tick of human-made time to the ancient, celestial pulse of the lunar month. In an era where artificial light was scarce, the moon was a powerful presence, its changing face dictating the rhythms of work, travel, and worship. A clock that could display its phases was not a mere astronomical curiosity. It was a vital tool that synchronized daily life with the cosmos, transforming the abstract passage of days into a visible, orbiting dance that everyone could understand. The engineering challenge of replicating the lunar cycle was a breathtaking feat of medieval gearwork, a puzzle that required both mathematical brilliance and exquisite craftsmanship. The core of the problem was a number that has fascinated humanity for millennia: 29.5. The moon does not conform to our neat, integer-based calendars. It takes approximately 29.5 days to complete its cycle from new moon to full moon and back again. How do you make a gear which by its very nature deals in whole numbers of teeth accurately model a half-day? The solution was a masterpiece of mechanical compromise and ingenuity. Clockmakers designed a specialized gear train that would advance the moon phase indicator by one tooth every 24 hours. But to account for that extra half-day, they incorporated a clever jumping mechanism. Often, this involved a dual-toothed gear or a sophisticated heart-shaped cam that would trigger a slight extra jump every other day, ensuring that over the course of the 59 days it takes for 2 full lunar cycles, the mechanism had advanced exactly 59 steps, perfectly mirroring the 60-day pattern of the moon's journey. This was precision engineering of the highest order, a physical mechanism built to reconcile the imperfect rhythms of nature with the turning of perfectly machined gears. This information was absolutely vital across multiple facets of medieval society. For farmers, the moon's phase was a crucial guide. Planting, harvesting, and even the slaughter of animals were often scheduled according to lunar cycles, based on the deeply held belief that the moon's influence affected sap rise in plants and the quality of meat. A public clock with a lunar display allowed an entire agricultural community to plan their work in harmony with these ancient traditions. For sailors and fishermen, the moon was a matter of safety and profit. Its phase dictates the strength of the tides. A full or new moon brings the highest high tides and the lowest low tides, known as spring tides. A lunar clock in a port town could predict these dangerous and advantageous periods days in advance, telling fishermen the best times to set sail for deep water species, or warning captains of the heightened risk of coastal flooding when a storm coincided with a full moon. Perhaps most importantly, the lunar calendar was the beating heart of the medieval religious world. The entire liturgical calendar of the Christian Church hinged on the moon. The date of Easter, the most important feast in the Christian year, is calculated as the first Sunday after the first full moon following the spring equinox. This means that Easter, and by extension all the movable feasts that depend on it like Ash Wednesday and Pentecost, shift by weeks every single year. A clock that displayed the moon's phase was an essential reference for the clergy and the faithful, providing a constant public reminder of where they were in the sacred rhythm of the church year. It visually counted down the days to Lent, to Easter, and to other lunar-dependent holidays, making the complex calculations of the ecclesiastical calendar visible and accessible to every member of the community, from the bishop to the illiterate farmer. The lunar clock's face was often its most captivating feature. The moon phase was typically displayed through a small, rotating aperture in the main dial, behind which a beautifully painted orb would slowly turn. One half of the orb was a brilliant, polished gold or silver representing the sunlit face of the moon, while the other half was painted a deep, dark blue or black. As the mechanism turned, this ball would rotate, its painted surface appearing and disappearing through the hole to show the familiar crescent, half, and full moons. On the most elaborate astronomical clocks, this aperture might be surrounded by a starry firmament or integrated into a larger display showing the moon's path through the zodiac. This was more than just a technical display. It was a miniature theater of the cosmos, a moving image that captured the imagination and educated the public. It allowed people to see the connection between the passing days on the clock's face and the changing face of the moon in their own night sky, fostering a tangible sense of living within a vast, orderly, and beautiful universe. The lunar calendar clock did not just tell time. It told people where they were in the grand, monthly dance of the heavens, a silent reminder that even as their own lives moved forward, they were part of a celestial cycle that would continue long after they were gone. Yet for all the monumental achievements of the great tower clocks and intricate astronomical wonders, timekeeping remained fundamentally anchored to a specific place. The rhythm of life was dictated by the bells you could hear from your home or the square you passed through. But in the 15th century, a breakthrough occurred that would literally put time into motion, unshackling it from stone towers and heavy weights and placing it directly into the hands of the individual. This was the invention of the mainspring, a tightly wound ribbon of tempered steel that held a tremendous amount of potential energy in a remarkably compact form. Unlike a weight that needed to fall in a straight vertical drop, requiring a tall case and a stationary position, a spring could be wound tight and then slowly release its stored power to drive a mechanism anywhere on a table, on a ship, or even in a pocket. This was the portable revolution, a paradigm shift that transformed time from a public resource, broadcast by a community, into a personal possession, a private reference point that you could carry with you through the world. The engineering challenge of harnessing this new power source was immense and required a second, complementary invention every bit as crucial as the mainspring itself, the fusee. A simple spring does not deliver constant force. It is at its most powerful when fully wound and grows progressively weaker as it unwinds. This would cause a clock to run frantically fast at first and then slow to a crawl, making it hopelessly inaccurate. The fusee was the brilliant solution, a cone-shaped pulley with a spiral groove cut into it, connected to the mainspring barrel by a fine chain or gut line. As the spring unwound and its force diminished, the chain would pull on the fusee's smaller, narrower diameter, which provided less mechanical advantage. As the spring weakened, the leverage increased, perfectly compensating for the loss of power and delivering a remarkably consistent force to the gear train. This elegant dance between the spring's uncoiling energy and the fusee's variable leverage was the true heart of the portable timekeeping revolution, a masterpiece of mechanical equilibrium that made personal accuracy possible. This new technology gave birth to the first truly personal timepieces. Initially, these were luxurious table clocks, ornate objects of gilt brass and enamel that adorned the studies of wealthy merchants and nobility. For the first time, an individual could have accurate time in their own home, independent of the church bells or town crier. This was a profound shift in social power. It meant the elite could now operate on their own schedules, a private rhythm that set them apart from the communal pulse of the masses. Soon, the technology shrank further, leading to the development of the first watches, known then as clock watches. These were not yet worn on the wrist but were carried in a pocket or hung from a neck chain. They were often spherical or cylindrical, beautifully engraved and prized as much for their value as jewelry and symbols of status as for their timekeeping ability. They were the smartphones of the Renaissance, expensive, revolutionary, and a clear marker of one's place in the world. The impact of this portability rippled out far beyond the drawing rooms of the wealthy, fundamentally altering the human relationship with time itself. When time is a public bell, it is something that happens to you, an external authority that commands your attention. But when you carry time in your pocket, it becomes a tool you use, a resource you manage. This fostered a new, more personal sense of punctuality and self-regulation. A merchant could time a meeting without relying on a client's clock. A traveler could know the hour deep in a forest or on the open sea. Time was no longer tied to a location, it was tied to the person. This began the process of internalizing time, of making its measurement a continuous, personal responsibility rather than an occasional, communal event. The mainspring didn't just power clocks, it wound up the very concept of modern individuality, setting in motion a world where we are all perpetually keeping time for ourselves. Yet, even as the mainspring began to shrink time into a personal possession, another breathtaking innovation was achieving the exact opposite, transforming public timekeeping into a form of mass entertainment, moral instruction, and pure, unadulterated spectacle. This was the age of the automaton clock, a device that did far more than merely mark the hours it performed them, turning the abstract passage of time into a theatrical event that could captivate, educate, and astonish an entire town square. Imagine the scene in Strasbourg or Prague as the hour approaches. A crowd begins to gather, their faces tilted upwards towards the magnificent clock face high on the cathedral wall. They are not there to check the time, they are there for the show. As the great bell begins to toll, a hidden world of gears and levers whirs into life. A door swings open and a procession of carved wooden apostles parades solemnly past a figure of Christ, each one bowing in reverence. A skeleton representing death grimly turns an hourglass and rings a bell. A golden rooster flaps its wings and crows mechanically. For a few mesmerizing minutes, the clock becomes a stage, and time itself becomes the director of a mechanical ballet that blends scripture, science, and stunning artistry into a single, unforgettable performance. The engineering behind these marvels was as complex as any cathedral vault, a hidden labyrinth of cams, levers, and weight-driven mechanisms operating in perfect synchrony with the central timekeeping movement. While the main clockwork counted the seconds with its steady tick-tock, A separate programming drum, much like a giant music box cylinder, was slowly turned by the same power source. This drum was studded with precisely placed pins and notches. As it rotated, these pins would trip levers, release catches, and activate a sequential chain of events. A pin might pull a string to make an apostle figure step forward, while a notch would allow a spring to release, causing Death's arm to swing and strike his bell. The timing had to be flawless, with each automated movement perfectly choreographed to coincide with the striking of the hours. This was mechanical storytelling of the highest order, requiring the clockmaker to be part playwright, part puppeteer, and part precision engineer, all working together to create a narrative that unfolded with breathtaking reliability, day after day, year after year. These performances served a far deeper purpose than simple amusement. They were powerful tools of civic and religious instruction for a largely illiterate population. The automata acted out morality plays in miniature, their movements heavy with symbolic meaning. The procession of the apostles reinforced core tenets of the faith. The constant presence of death with his inexorable hourglass served as a memento mori, a stark reminder of life's brevity and the importance of piety. Vanity might be represented by a figure preening in a mirror, only to be struck by death's bell at the appointed hour. This visual storytelling made complex theological concepts accessible and memorable, weaving the rhythm of the clock into the moral and spiritual fabric of daily life. The clock tower became a pulpit, its mechanical sermon delivered with a precision and spectacle that no human preacher could ever match, ensuring its message was heard by every citizen, regardless of their station or education. Beyond their didactic role, these clocks were the ultimate expressions of civic pride and technological prowess. A town that could afford such an intricate and expensive marvel was making a powerful statement to rivals and visitors alike. It proclaimed wealth, technical sophistication, and divine favor. The clock became the central landmark, the defining symbol of the city's identity. People would arrange to meet by the clock, its spectacle providing a shared experience that bound the community together. The rhythmic performance occurring at the same time each day created a powerful, predictable punctuation in the life of the town, a moment of collective pause and wonder amidst the hustle and bustle of the marketplace. It transformed time from a private measurement into a public event, a shared story that everyone could witness and discuss. The legacy of the automaton clock is a beautiful reminder that our relationship with time has never been purely functional. Even as we strive for greater accuracy, we have always sought to imbue time with meaning, narrative, and beauty. These clocks represent a world where art and engineering were inseparable, where the measurement of moments was considered a worthy canvas for the highest levels of creative expression. They challenge our modern, utilitarian view of time as a number on a screen, inviting us to remember that time can be a story, a spectacle, and a shared experience that connects us not just to the mechanics of the universe, but to the community around us and the deeper truths we choose to celebrate. In the whirring gears and dancing figures of the automaton clock, time itself becomes a performer, and we, the audience, are reminded that every passing hour is an act in a grand, ongoing story. Yet for all their breathtaking ingenuity and profound impact, the reign of these mechanical marvels was not destined to last forever. The very human drive for perfection that created them eventually engineered their own obsolescence, ushering in new technologies that rendered these intricate wonders functionally obsolete. The first major blow came in the 1600s with the invention of the pendulum clock by Christian Huygens. By replacing the clumsy, inconsistent swing of the foliate balance with the precise, harmonic oscillation of a pendulum, these new timekeepers achieved a leap in accuracy that was nothing short of revolutionary. Where a fine verge and foliate clock might gain or lose 15 minutes a day, an early pendulum clock could be accurate to within a single minute. This wasn't just an incremental improvement. It was a quantum leap that suddenly made every existing public clock seem hopelessly primitive. The pendulum's regular mathematics-governed swing introduced a new standard of precision that mechanical clocks simply could not match, making them instantly outdated from a technical standpoint. This relentless march of progress only accelerated with the scientific and industrial revolutions. The 18th and 19th centuries' obsession with navigation and longitude spurred the development of ever more precise marine chronometers, while the rise of railroads created an urgent, non-negotiable demand for standardized time across vast distances. A town could operate on its own local solar time, but a national railway network could not tolerate a single station's clock being a few minutes out of sync. The potential for disaster was too great. This need for synchronization across continents demanded a level of accuracy and uniformity that the individual craftsmanship of medieval clockmaking could never hope to achieve at scale. The world was shifting from a patchwork of local times to a system of time zones, a change that required cheap, reliable, and mass-producible timekeepers, not unique masterpieces. The final act of this technological disruption arrived in the 20th century with two more seismic shifts: the quartz revolution and the advent of atomic timekeeping. The quartz clock, which uses the incredibly stable vibration of a crystal when electrified to mark time, made accuracy astonishingly affordable. Suddenly, a battery-powered wristwatch could keep better time than the most meticulously crafted tower clock from the medieval era. This was the true democratization of precision, placing incredible timekeeping into the hands of the masses for a trivial cost. And then came the atomic clock, which bases its tick on the unwavering resonance of atoms themselves, achieving a level of precision so staggering that it would take millions of years to gain or lose a single second. This is the realm of GPS satellites and global time signals, a world so far removed from the celestial observations of the Astrolabe that it seems almost like magic by comparison. But it is crucial to understand that these devices did not fade away because they were failures. They became obsolete precisely because they were such magnificent successes. They proved that mechanical timekeeping was not only possible but could be beautiful, meaningful, and integrated into the very heart of society. They laid the essential philosophical and technical groundwork that all later innovations would build upon. The verge escapement taught us how to regulate energy, the foliate balance showed us the principle of an oscillator, and the intricate gear trains of the astronomical clock demonstrated how to model the cosmos with machinery. Their decline is not a story of failure, but a testament to the iterative, cumulative nature of human progress. We stand on the shoulders of these mechanical giants, and every nanosecond of precision in our modern world owes a silent debt to the patient, rhythmic tick of a clock in a medieval tower, the slow burn of a monk's candle, and the steady trickle of sand in an hourglass guiding a ship through a star-filled night. Yet the story of these magnificent machines does not end with their obsolescence, gathering dust in the annals of history. Their legacy is not a final, silent tick, but a continuous, living pulse that beats at the very heart of our modern world, influencing fields far beyond the boundaries of traditional horology. The principles of precision engineering, painstakingly developed by medieval clockmakers to regulate the swing of a foliate or the release of a verge escapement, became the foundational language of the Industrial Revolution. The complex gear trains that powered astronomical clocks are the direct mechanical ancestors of the differential systems in modern automobiles, and the concept of a programmed sequence of events, so spectacularly demonstrated by automaton clocks, laid the conceptual groundwork for the punch card looms that eventually gave rise to computer programming. Every algorithm that executes a timed command, every piece of software that manages a process in a precise sequence, owes a silent debt to the mechanical logic first encoded in brass and iron by craftsmen centuries ago. This enduring influence extends powerfully into the realms of art and design, where the aesthetic of these ancient timekeepers continues to captivate and inspire. The intricate, exposed mechanics of a skeleton watch, where every gear and spring is proudly displayed, is a direct homage to the architectural brilliance of the medieval clock tower, transformed into a wearable masterpiece. Steampunk culture, with its fusion of Victorian elegance and raw industrial machinery, draws its very soul from the look and feel of these elaborate devices, reimagining a past where technology was visible, tangible, and beautifully ornate. Furthermore, contemporary artists often incorporate the motifs of hourglasses, turning gears, and celestial charts into their work, using these symbols to explore profound themes of time, mortality, and humanity's place in the universe, proving that the poetic power of these objects remains as potent as ever. The passionate dedication of museums, historians, and a global community of enthusiasts ensures that this legacy is not forgotten but is instead preserved, studied, and celebrated with ever greater depth. In workshops around the world, master craftsmen and women are using traditional techniques to restore these antique marvels to their original working glory, not as a sterile academic exercise but as a way to keep their story alive and ticking. The painstaking process of restoring a 15th-century tower clock becomes a form of time travel, a dialogue across centuries between the original maker and the modern restorer, each learning from the other. For the enthusiasts who collect and study everything from ancient sundials to early wristwatches, these are not mere relics. They are touchstones to different eras, each device a frozen moment of human ingenuity that tells us as much about the society that created it as it does about the time it measured. Perhaps the most profound modern relevance of these obsolete devices lies in the philosophical lessons they offer our high-speed, digitally saturated world. In an age of atomic clocks that measure time in unfathomable fractions of a second, the slower, more deliberate pace of a sundial or a candle clock invites a different kind of relationship with time itself, one based on observation, patience, and a harmony with natural rhythms. They remind us that time is not just a number to be managed efficiently, but an experience to be felt, a rhythm to be lived. The journey from the shadow cast by an obelisk to the vibration of a cesium atom is not a story of replacement, but one of accumulation, a layering of understanding where each new innovation builds upon the wisdom of the last. These magnificent obsolete devices teach us that the quest for accuracy is indeed a journey, not a destination, and their legacy continues to tick on, not just in the heart of every clock, but in the very fabric of our technological, artistic, and philosophical world. From the astrolabe's celestial calculations to the mechanical clock's rhythmic beat, these 30 obsolete devices are far more than forgotten relics. They are a testament to a timeless human quest to understand our place in the universe and to impose order on the beautiful chaos of existence. Each one, from the simplest candle clock to the most complex astronomical wonder, represents a unique conversation between human ingenuity and the natural world, a dialogue written in shadows, carved in brass, and measured in the steady flow of water and sand. They teach us that precision is not a modern invention but an ancient obsession, that artistry is not separate from engineering but its essential partner, and that perseverance in the face of immense technical challenges is what ultimately propels us forward. These creations were not merely tools for marking hours, they were philosophical statements, spiritual guides, and communal hearts, weaving the very fabric of society with their consistent, unwavering pulse. What these magnificent machines remind us most profoundly is that time is a dual experience. It is both a cold, measurable quantity and a warm, deeply human phenomenon. We can count the seconds with atomic precision, yet we experience those seconds through the lens of emotion, memory, and anticipation. The medieval world understood this duality intuitively. Their devices did not just tell time, they celebrated it, ritualized it, and connected it to the grand cycles of the cosmos and the intimate rhythms of daily life. The bell-striking mechanism unified a town in shared moments. The incense clock engaged the senses to mark the passage of a contemplative hour, and the lunar calendar clock connected the planting of a seed to the phase of the moon. They wove time into the very meaning of being human, a lesson we sometimes forget in our era of digital immediacy and constant standardized time. As we reflect on these marvels, it's a humbling and thrilling exercise to consider the devices we rely on today. The smartphone in your pocket, the smartwatch on your wrist, these are our astrolabes, our mechanical clocks. They are the pinnacle of our current understanding, marvels of miniaturization and connectivity that would seem like pure magic to a medieval craftsman. Yet one day they too will undoubtedly seem archaic. Future generations may look back at our glowing screens and silicon chips with the same sense of wonder and curiosity we now direct toward a verge escapement or a foliate balance. They will see not primitive technology, but magnificent stepping stones, essential chapters in the ongoing human story of innovation. Our tools are no less magnificent for being temporary. Their eventual obsolescence is simply a guarantee that the journey of discovery continues. Thank you for joining me on this extraordinary journey through the gears and shadows of history. If these stories of innovation and artistry resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into history's hidden wonders. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Which of these devices fascinated you the most? Is there a forgotten technology you'd like us to explore next? Until our next adventure through time, keep looking up and never stop wondering about the brilliant minds and beautiful machines that brought us to where